Welcome back, fam. A thousand apologies for the delay. No, the show is not dead. Daniel has left us for other things. And my good buddy JL is going to be joining us as my co host from here on out. He's been on Dangerous Rhetoric before as a guest and on some spaces on X. And if you haven't met him, he's a father, veteran, and a philosophy professor. Today, we're going to continue on the beat of James O'Keefe being a raging charlatan and probable psychopath. And I'll just introduce our little panel of guests. We have Christian Hartsock returning. Christian was on our previous episode 124 with Matt Tyrmand and Daniel Strack. And if you haven't watched episode 123 and 124, they basically lay out the whole collapse of Project Veritas and all the details there. So if you aren't familiar with that, we're going to be referencing a lot of the stuff from those two episodes. So you may just want to check that out if you haven't yet. They're also available on Spotify as audio recordings, if that's your preferred method. Also have Matt Tyrmand coming on. Matt is a former member of the Project Veritas board. Christian is a undercover journalist and videographer who's worked with James going back from before PV and during PV. And like I said, they were both on the last episode and they gave their backstories and a lot of their perceptions of how that all went down. Today we have Miss Kayla Dones, or Mrs., right? You're married, Kayla, right? Mrs. Yes. Kayla Dones joining us.
Dones.
Dones.
Yeah.
Dones. My bad. Kayla is a journalist and a James O'Keefe whistleblower. She was one of the first whistleblowers for OMG. She also helped produce the new OMG documentary, A Line in the Sand, about the Southern Border Crisis, now being promoted by Tucker Carlson. And most recently, she shared information from inside OMG with the New York Times exposing James's potentially, shall we say, duplicitous or nefarious efforts to get his citizen journalists to perhaps violate the law, recording interactions at voting booths in some states where, some states that you can't take cameras, you can't record, it's illegal to record in, any sort of voting location. And it seems like James was encouraging his citizen journalists to potentially violate the law in that regard, just so that he could get some viral footage and, a couple clicks on the internet. So with all of that said, thank you, Kayla, for joining us. Appreciate it. Can't wait to hear your story. Maybe we can just open with your background, how you got into, film and citizen journalism, and then lead into, how you met James or ended up coming to associate with Jay.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for letting me come on. I have been doing citizen journalism for the last 10 years. Always very passionate about building community, highlighting different people's voices, whether they're artists, musicians, poets, journalists in different areas of America, as well as different areas of the world. I, produced a local print and digital zine featuring over 100 different artists. My work was featured through RT in regards to an investigation I was doing with a local police force here in my region. And I was the first undercover citizen journalist at OMG to go and get a story in the swiper department. And then I was the lead journalist for Line in the Sand, did the investigations for Act Blue, which I would love to get into. There's a lot of issues with that. And the election beat that you mentioned. So it was around October of last year that I started corresponding with James. I was really interested in his course, O'Keefe Academy. I did this swiper investigation where I went undercover, wore hidden cameras, got a story in regards to a bio lab that was being ran by a Chinese nationalist, hit 1 million views within, 24 hours. And they, myself and James and his operations manager, Steven Salvagna, we started talking about, more potential long-term work. And right around that time, I ended up reaching out to Christian, and I kind of just asked him, what is it that I'm getting into here? right? And Christian, I would love to hear, what you remember from that conversation. It was really impactful for me. And then right around this time, October 2024, I called Christian and I was like, I had my moment. And my eyes have been open from there. So Christian, if you want to share, any of those memories, I would love to hear what you remember from that conversation that we had a year ago.
Well, I recall getting a Twitter message from you at the time and telling me that you were working for AMGA. You were James was, I guess, asking you to move to Florida, and you live in Fresno, so you were, it was a big move. It would have been a big move, and I guess you had, I don't know, how did you come across me? I guess you had known that I had worked with James for 14 years, right?
Yeah, I was searching for Project Veritas people. I wanted to hear something from their side. I wanted to know, I'm a journalist, I ask questions. I'm like, what's going on? And Christian, you responded to me. Yeah.
Something a lot of people were not doing at the time, which was asking questions. Wait, can you guys hear me? Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Shoot.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, that was something that people weren't doing at the time, was asking questions of the actual Project Veritas journalists who had stuck with Project Veritas after James left. And then I think at the time in October, we had all just recently gotten purged by Hannah Giles. So, yeah, at the time, Kayla reached out to me, and what I recall is we got on the phone. I didn't say anything negative necessarily. I just wanted to equip her with the facts that were being left out of the narrative. There's obviously reasons why I worked with James for 14 years. He was a dear friend, and I really enjoyed our friendship. And he helped me discover talents that I never knew I had, never would have known that I had, for undercover journalism, and which is something only very few people in the world do or know how to do, or even would happen to know that they know how to do. It's a very specialized skill set. And, I had gotten to know James coincidentally around the same time I was getting to know Andrew Breitbart when I was in my early 20s. And, I ended up, Andrew helped me discover talents that I had. James helped me discover talents that I had. And I ended up helping break some of the biggest stories, stories of a lifetime for over 14 years, and then training people, newcomers, people like Kayla, to do the same and discover their potential to be journalists. So I think I recall there trying to be as full disclosure as possible. There's reasons to work with James, that I obviously worked with James for 14 years, and there's reasons to be hesitant. James always wanted me to, I was stubborn. I never was willing to leave California. James always wanted me to move to New York. But I don't know, I love the California sunshine and the beaches. And so I was never willing to leave. So I think that what I told Kayla is like, look, I was never willing to leave, just for, you're asking the wrong person if about leaving California to work with James. Probably not, I can only speak for myself. It's not something I was willing to do, not because of James personally, just because I just more because of California. So I told her basically the facts that were not being reported, the facts that were not included in the, James's, President's Day speech back in 2023, and that the facts that Jack Posobiec and Tim Pool, are too pusillanimous to report or even ask for. Because I figure if you're gonna, you have what, 4 kids, and a husband and a home and a life in Fresno, it's best to know, best to have full disclosure about what happened, what you're getting into, and the reasons to do it, the reasons not to do it. So what I recall is not giving you any advice one way or the other, just wanting you to be fully equipped with the facts so you can make a major life decision.
Yeah, and it wasn't.
Is that your recollection?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you were so objective. There's an echo, so you might want to mute, but you were so objective in that conversation, and I was digging. I was like, I want all the answers. Give me all the juicy details, and he's just like, I remember this quote, like this line from you, if you ever have a moment that makes you pause, really think about that, and that to me, as soon as I sent my letter of resignation in, almost a year to the day, I called Christian and I'm just like, I had my pause moment, and it was just like, wow. And then hearing your story, Christian, just, it was in regards to the film, my pause moment. Right. And, my request to just want to stand with the team that I built at the premiere. I didn't ask to go to Tucker. I didn't ask to, give a shout out on Megyn Kelly or go to Mar-a-Lago. For me, it was like, I want to stand with my team. I see this as graduation day. All of these people I found and built out, this amazing team of, citizen journalists who've been covering the border for months, even years. And when that was denied to me, it was just like, what happened? Like, what? I don't understand. And Christian really helped me process that, because apparently, James, this is something James does, right? And if you want to speak to that, Christian, just in regards to, your story, that was so huge, so monumental. It got James an invite to the White House. And he decided to not take you. And that was a really impactful moment. So I'd love for you to be able to share that, because once I heard that, I understood, I'm being gaslit, I'm being used. And this isn't what I thought it was, so if you could speak to that, Christian.
Let me just, real quick, Christian, before you start, let me just bring Mr. Tyrmand up to join everyone.
What up, boys and girls? And Christian, where's your beautiful blonde surfer boy face?
He's busy. He's in traveling. He's giving us what he can.
That's so lame.
You get one peek.
No, dude, stay on screen. You're fucking up the screen.
Take a picture.
Leave it on.
Take a picture, lasts longer.
Good job. Say it.
Dude, you're literally like a total dream of Hollywood grandeur. Now you don't even want to be on camera? Come on, that's Hi, Kayla.
Hey, this is my therapist, Matthew Tyrmand, great guy.
I thought it was a demon. I thought it was the devil.
No, both of these guys have been helping me process, because, if I didn't have these people, I would be stuck still trying to figure out what's going on, and feeling like, did I do something wrong? Was it my fault? But I had affirmations the day I left.
I remember when Christian told me about you guys speaking the first time, and that James was trying to push you to move to the soon-to-be, one day be created new office in West Palm. And, Christian's classic Socratic method of like, but people keep getting fired and leaving, maybe uprooting your life from California to Miami with a family and 4 kids and a husband. Maybe you should think about that as that kind of commitment you want to make, even if it was on paper a dream gig. And I think he saved you a lot of agita and heartache by letting you see that on your own, reflect on it, and make a more judicious decision. And now, welcome to the proud club of alumni of people fucked over by a narcissistic sociopath with a heavy dose of Asperger's and a sort of disgusting male nymphomania. Very different than Brentley's nymphomania, but
it really is disturbing. I mean, for the past 3 to 4 weeks, I left October 14th. So for the past 3 to 4 weeks, I have been having nonstop conversations with people, ex-girlfriends, donors, former employees, and you think that you've heard the horror story that tops them all, right? And then you talk to the next person, you're like, oh my God, it gets worse.
Oh, so much worse.
It's disturbing. It really is. Yeah. But Christian, he was objective, but he laid out the facts, and it really helped me guide my decision making. And, you were going to talk about your story, Christian, before Matt came in, about the story that got James invited to the White House. I think that's a really important moment that people should know about.
And then I just want to circle back, Kayla, to how you got involved with OMG and became that whistleblower, and we'll come back to that.
Yeah, so I think you're referring to the Google story, where I went undercover in San Francisco. I took Jen Janai out to dinner, and she was the head of machine learning fairness, and got her telling me about how they're using algorithms to affect to prevent another Trump situation in 2020. This was, I believe, this was in 2019. And it was a big story. It was a huge story. It was actually, New York did not want to publish Project Veritas. The consensus was not to publish it, which very much surprised me, because I'm like, I thought this is exactly what we're trying to find out, is if they're using algorithms, using machine learning fairness to try and affect the 2020 election outcome. And it was, and so that was the consensus. Like, yeah, it's just not, we're not that interested in publishing it. It's not strong enough, which very much surprised me, because I thought it was like literally word for word what we were looking for. But one of my colleagues ended up really strong arming them in New York and saying, hey, you've got to, like, being just a total, making a big deal out of it. Like, guys, you need to publish this. You need to publish this. And they did publish it. And sure enough, Donald Trump was in the Oval Office, I think, wrangling a gaggle, and forced them to report it. I think they were probably badgering him about Russia stuff. And he was like, no, what we're going to talk about today is this video that just came out from Project Veritas. And I remember Google banned the video, but by the time they had banned it, Donald Trump Jr. had already tweeted the embed code. And it ended up becoming, I think, possibly our most viral video to date, just on after being banned from YouTube. And then days later, they had a Senate and House hearings with Google executives, and Ted Cruz was reading a transcript of my dinner with Jen Janai to the faces of these Google executives, demanding they explain themselves, and Dan Crenshaw in the House too. So it was a humongous story. And I think of that same week, James got invited to this influencer summit. I'm not sure if it was related to that or as a result of that, but I recall, President Trump had James stand up, and called him out and congratulated him on the video. And so that was a big moment. I think James ended up putting that quote in his email signatures, actually. So yeah, it was a huge story. We were very excited about it. I'm very proud of it.
Yeah, but I think, Christian, that you explained to me, you asked James, like, this has always been a dream of mine. I would love to be able to go. And, this is off of my story, and he denied you that moment.
I wouldn't say it was a lifelong dream to go to the White House. It would have been nice. There was a couple times that James, I think I'd asked him if I could go to the White House with him when Trump was in office, because, it was the Democracy Partners story that really, I think that got us well, no, that's not true. Donald Trump had met with James back in 2014. So they had something of a prior rapport, but I remember Democracy Partners was the Bob Creamer, my Hillary story about the bird doggers was very, very big, huge, got us on the front page of the New York Times in 2016, got us a Trump mention in the Trump debate with Hillary Clinton. He mentioned it to her face. And so that was a huge story that I think that James will himself say, he credits for getting Trump into the White House. So yeah, there was a couple times where
James likes to take credit for a lot of things that have changed the course of human history, and I I assure you, he had nothing to do with any of them.
Problem is it seems so petty. Like for me, so many times you're put in a position where even talking about it makes you seem petty. So it's like you're put in this impossible position. But if you don't say anything, so I don't know. I wasn't entitled to a visit to the White House or a trip to the White House or anything. I was paid a fair salary, and I was paid what I was expected to be paid and whatever. But yeah, there was.
I think you were underpaid, Christian.
Okay, well, one could argue that certainly.
I remember you arguing that to me.
Okay.
Yeah,
right.
but the thing is it's not petty. Yeah. It's not petty. You said this. You said credit is currency, and I added to that, and I said credit is legacy. And we're talking about journalists who their work is being taken and used and manipulated into, oh, this is my doing, taking all of that effort. I mean, I'm talking 10 months, hundreds of hours, with no recognition, no credit given, no bylines. That is theft of a person's work. That is theft of a person's soul. You put in so much energy and so much thought and so, it's like you can't ever get those moments back. And so it's not petty. I think that, people that would say it's petty, it's like, okay, put yourself in those shoes. You work your ass off. Like my kids did not see my face for 10 hours every single day, 10 to 15 hours. And then I get off, and I'm like barely human because I've been doing like 5 to 10 different jobs all in one day. I mean,
and getting yelled at and told how stupid you are and how incompetent you are from a guy who loses a phone every 20 minutes.
And so it's like there's this constant stress. There's this constant pressure. People are, being fired or quitting or leaving. I was there for 10 months and we ran through 10 employees. It's like there's this constant revolving door. So you're just always on edge. Like, am I next? Am I going to be fired? Do I need to work harder? What do I, and it's just like, oh my God, all of those moments. And, how hard. There's this artist named Erykah Badu. And I love this woman because she made this video and she's like, how to credit an artist, and she's like, I was going to go to this event and I wanted this headpiece and I found this artist. Here's their Instagram page. And then, it was a 1-minute video of how to give credit. And it's so simple. It's so simple. Yet, because this person's ego, because whatever is going on in this man's mind. And what's wild is once I got out, everyone's like, oh, you were one of his best. That's how he treats.
I noticed that, I was a little bit leery because I thought from the initial that you had the, a fair amount of the cult of personality in you to go with him, despite all of the stuff that's percolating and even reflecting on possibly moving. But then talking to you after like 7 minutes, I was like, holy shit, this chick is awesome. I mean, like really, really competent, sharp, to the point. And then working with you now the last few weeks, just, getting to know you more and understanding the story of what you've seen, like you're an absolute all-star. You would have been an absolute home run for PV to have for many years because you're phenomenal. Logistics, organizing, producing, vision, execution plus vision. So many people have vision as creatives and can't execute for shit. And you're like, I mean, my goal is I want to get you placed because you're incredibly talented. And I think that, the fact that you left OMG, I mean, they got to have the B, C, and D team. And I'm sure they'll run out as well eventually, just because that's what he does, right? I joked with him once that I wanted to get him a t-shirt made that said, the only dissatisfying thing in all my relationships is ... me. And there's no human being whom that applies more for than Jimbles O'Kimbles.
But Kayla, I think what you were recalling is the thing that was hurtful, I guess, was prior to that visit to the White House, Google, after the Google story, before we even did the Google story, James had told me, he said, the next time I get invited to the White House, you're coming with me. He had told me that, I think actually literally 1 or 2 White House visits before. And I was like, okay, cool. That's nice. And then, and then I get this Google story and then he gets invited again and he brings Eric Cochran, but not me. who was the Pinterest insider that I actually managed. So it was just, it's
also
one of those things that, it's like I wasn't entitled to an invitation to the White House, but it's like, you give someone your word, and then you are literally getting recognized at the White House for a video that I did. Things like that just I don't know. It's like things that it doesn't, I think, occur to him somehow that how those things come off to people, and he doesn't remember things that he says,
and he doesn't care. People do be used.
And
he doesn't care.
Sure enough,
Christian, I feel like you have such a kind heart. You're willing to see the good. Like, these are actual, like, intentionally planned moments. There's intention behind ripping the rug from someone's feet, right? Like in my story, okay, we have this Tucker event. We're going to be featuring Line in the Sand. He picks the person that was working under me, same thing as you, the field operations manager who I pulled onto the team, and we would sit there and build out all the field ops, and I would have all this data, and he would help me like organize it into Google Docs, and then we'd present it to the field team. So that guy ended up becoming the assistant director somehow. And then he gets this girl named Kristen, who is now like our producer, who is, I don't want to talk bad on people, but like...
No, this is the right format for that. No. Go to town.
Like the inside joke was that she was an ABC 30s reject that would smoke cigarettes at AA meetings. Like, she was just not all there. It was just so confusing. Like, right, all the way up, we're building out the film. He's always accessible. He's always there. He's always encouraging. Oh, now we're in post-production. We're getting these deals signed with Tucker. And all of a sudden, I'm not going to meetings anymore. All of a sudden, I'm not getting like invites to anything. I'm like having to go and talk to other people, like, what's going on, what's happening. Like, no one's talking to me. And it's like, you get tossed into this corner, like, oh, you're all of your work and everything you've done, it's all been used up. And now you can just go sit in the corner, stay in your lane, right? That's what they kept telling me, stay in your lane. And one thing that really bothers me is throughout the process, there was so much information coming in through our tip lines. And I'm like, you guys, I want to be able to outsource this to people on Spaces, to other citizen journalists. We can't cover this all. But because there's like this hoarding and it's like, no, it's mine. We lost so many different investigations. We lost out on so many different moments actually being highlighted and looked into further and empowering people to go out there and get the story. And it's just like all because what? James has to be the center. He has to be the focus. It's all about James. At what point?
Journalism is a vehicle for him to get in front of a camera and LARP. It was Laura Jadid who came up with, he's not as much a journalist as he decided to LARP as a journalist after his, failed high school theater career went to shit. Because for him, and this is textbook narcissistic sociopathy, he has to be the center of attention. Everything revolves around him. He's the center of the universe. And so all the people that come and go are tools to deliver more things that can get him adulation and invites. Meanwhile, as he wants rose petals thrown at his feet, he won't actually talk to another human being. He's incapable. Put him in a room, in a reception. The only thing he can talk about is himself. And every investigation is like that investigation in Arizona where he played a homeless man with a wig and a brown bag in it. He looked like such a fucking ridiculous loser. But that was half the content, was him acting as a homeless person. See, I can stumble around drunk in a wig. And we can get into the graying of the hair bit along with the bulletproof vest, as Kyle Sofer likes to say, or John Cardillo, there's no actual plates in it. It's all just a LARP.
Yeah. And what's so interesting, he has so many demons, right? Like in his own mind. Like he would often talk about, oh, these Project Veritas people, the PV demons, they're after me. And I would sit there and I really would contemplate, like, why do these people have so much hatred for this man, you know? And like, oh my God, they must really be like these negative, evil people.
Everybody in his life, everybody's ever interacted with.
Right. Like, I'm really just trying to think, like, what is going on? And then you become the burn victim and you're like, oh, I get it. Like, you know, you're ready.
It's not even hatred. It's more, I hate the rain because I can't go outside. No, this is deeper. This is a level of evil that, you know, you only come across a few times in your life. And if you're a responsible and moral person, you have to say to yourself, what can I do not to expose other people to this evil, to this, you know, this field of littered bodies and destroyed lives? I mean, he tries to destroy your life. He would have gotten you moved and then fired you a month later after you moved your family, because he doesn't give a shit.
He does not give a shit. And, you know, it's after I sent him my resignation letter, he called me to do an exit interview. And he's like, so where do you think you're going? You know, what do you think next? And I'm like, well, I'm kind of looking at Turning Point. I've been in conversation with some people over there. He's like, oh, Turning Point. Okay. As soon as I told him that, the door was shut. The person that I was talking to, Carlos, who's over there, you know, stopped talking to me. And I'm like, oh my God, was I blacklisted?
Did Christian tell the story about him, you know, months later?
Great for you. Yeah. So he not only,
try and get him fired. I mean,
yeah, he not only steals your work, steals all the credit, but then he goes above and beyond to blacklist you and ruin your life.
Yeah,
and so that's why, like, all the PV people have like such deep scars. Like, there's so many people that I've talked to. Oh, I don't even do journalism anymore. I'm completely black-pilled.
Oh, dude, people have PTSD from dealing with him and the abuse and the coercion, manipulation, the taking advantage of. I always say that if you got everybody who ever worked for him in an airport hangar and everyone had to leave their phones outside, he wouldn't get out alive. He'd be ripped limb from limb like Gaddafi.
And that is a, you know, consequence of long-term interactions with psychopaths and other people with these personality disorders. People do report PTSD and affiliated symptoms.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I told Matthew the other day, I'm like, I feel like I'm dealing with depression, you know, because you just pour, I mean, OMG was my dream job. You know, I got to speak.
Can we back up and can you explain how you got involved with them in the first place?
Yeah. So, how I started my journey is in regards to citizen journalism, is Luke Rosowski did a course 10 years ago called Change Media University. It was so impactful to my life. Like it empowered me to understand how to go get a story, how to do work in the field, how to use camera gear. It was a crash course into journalism. And, you know, I spoke with him directly. He had me, you know, be like a team builder for all the other students that were in there. Cause I've always been about community and empowering other people and working together and open source information. You know, I love that collaborative spirit. Hit the ground running with that class. And then 10 years later, James comes out with O'Keefe Academy. And I'm like, wow, this is another moment that I'm going to be able to refine my skills. And I mean, it was really well done. The O'Keefe Academy course, I appreciated it. I was writing reviews on it. I ended up.
Can you just, what exactly was that? Because I totally.
Yeah, sure. So it was essentially, he taught ethics, legal. There was maybe like 4 or 5 courses in regards to citizen journalism and really empowering people, how to go get a story, you know, just equipping people, empowering people who are interested in journalism that don't want to just go to school for, you know, 8 to 10 years and do all that stuff. So
like crash course series of videos.
Crash course. Yeah. And it was really good. I thought it was great. I was writing reviews on it, and I'd always been a fan of Project Veritas, of James O'Keefe. Like, it was something that I thought, they did great work. Very unique in how they cover stories and things like that. So I reached out to him. I was like, hey, I would love to do an interview with you. Let's do a space. So I got Luke Rosowski. I got James O'Keefe. We were all in this space talking about empowering citizen journalists.
Luke Rudkowski from Tim Pool, We Are Change?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, he's a total douchebag. Like epic level douchebag. Oh God, he's such a douche.
Matthew's just completely blackpilled to the whole industry, and I'm slowly getting there as well.
Not the whole. There's some great people, but I mean, there's a lot of douchebags, right? I mean, we're not. The difference between the left and the right is the left is socialist, one team, one dream. They don't really care about credit. They're looking to deliver socialist utopia, progressive utopia through social justice by hook or by crook. And the right is generally, very individualistic, profit motive. And that comes across in the mentalities of the people that we deal with on the right, that they're all after what I call the 3 C's: clicks, clout, and cash. And invariably it becomes cult. Cult is the best way to monetize, being in this sort of front of camera position. And Charlie Kirk, Tim Pool, Luke Rudkowski. I've got a big spreadsheet. We can go over it one by one. Tons. Robert Barnes, Viva Fry, Michael Malice, all a bunch of. They all know who James
goes on, and people should be aware. The cult of personality. Matthew really coined that, at least for me in my mind. And it's like, wow, once you see it, you really can't unsee it, But long story short, did a show with them. We're talking about citizen journalism, empowering them. That's always been something I've been very passionate about. And then he reached out to me and said, hey, can you join this webinar? I want you to see if you'd be interested in the Swiper program that I'm starting up.
American Swiper, clever.
American Swiper, yeah. So went to the webinar, and I, went through the whole motions, and I was the first person to get a story as an undercover citizen journalist through that program. And then from there, I ended up getting a job. And here we are today, jobless, traumatized, and
we can channel that trauma into productive efforts to, utilize your experience as a warning shot, the way a lot of us have, and a shot across the bow. We are righteously indignant with merit. We want accountability, we want justice, and mostly we want to make sure that he can't keep doing this to other people, the people that fall into this. And then also, I do believe that, a lot of people say, oh, the right, we need to stand with our own. No, bullshit. We have to police our own, because it's so unhealthy. It's so tawdry, especially when you've got a guy like him who's going around and banging every, trashy whore that slides into his DMs. And, the donor dollars bit makes it illegal. That's, there'll be much ink spilled over that. Depositions are ongoing, I hear. And, there will be accountability. There will be a public airing of this. But we really need to, focus on cleaning up our shit. Otherwise, we're no better than our ideological opposition. We don't stand for some level of morality, virtue, and ethics in journalism and in the way we treat people and in the letter and spirit of law when it comes to running nonprofits so they don't become slush funds, as so many of them have become. Then we're no better. And, that's, I think, what's motivating a lot of us who have voices. I'm not worried about you and, being jobless. You're just way too talented. We will find you something. I'm working on it because you're amazing.
I appreciate that so much, Matthew. And that really is why I'm choosing to speak out. I think others need to know. I think that James is preying on citizen journalists and whistleblowers.
Young people.
And that's really, really, and young people. And it's really disturbing to see.
And
women.
And midwits who are easily... captured. And
maybe that's a good point. We can move into, I think also for people at home, Christian had to go. He was arriving at his place of business, so he had to dip out. So we thank him for joining us for what time he could and sharing his story. Yeah. I saw, I wasn't really paying much attention to this thing. And then, Kayla sent me a whole package, and I was going through her stuff, and I saw this New York Times article talking about James potentially encouraging his citizen journalists to engage in illegal behavior, which, that's not going to come back on him at all. He can take their content, publish it, no problem. but those individuals could end up with, legal complications, criminal convictions down the line.
Look at Tina Peters in Colorado. That's her name, right? The one who was just sentenced for like a decade because she got involved in the cult. And by the way, I think there's a lot of election irregularity and stuff, but she went above and beyond with no knowledge of the risks she was putting onto herself. And now she's been sentenced to prison. And you know what? Bannon, who encouraged all this grassroots stuff with no legal advisory attached, is using her as another cause celeb for clicks for him to say, oh, this is the corruption of the system. But you put people without informed consent into these positions. That's certainly James is always willing to do. And bad stuff happens to him. And that's what we want to see prevented.
That postal worker from Erie, Pennsylvania, I remember from a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I mean, he was kind of a moron, but
he gets, this is my point.
He's exploited for it.
Yeah, he exploits these people for clicks, and then they end up having their reputations ruined, their jobs ruined, possibly criminal charges. And to somebody who has like narcissistic personality disorder, somebody who's on that cluster B spectrum, a born psychopath or, sort of a bred sociopath.
I think sociopath. Loomer's a psychopath. I think James is a sociopath.
So how do you, in my parlance, psychopaths are born, sociopaths are sort of bred or made over time, or somebody who chooses to basically kill off their conscience?
I think there's physiological and psychological imprints that are hereditary or imprinted preternaturally. So the way I differentiate between the two is a psychopath will do anything, like the dude who Daniel Penny subdued. That dude was a psychopath, out of control, can't control themselves. Sociopaths are a little bit more, they utilize manipulation and coercion with intent. There's premeditation, there's an action orientation that's more subtle, and the internal, and they can come across as normal, right? Psychopath, you look at a psychopath, they're not normal. There's nothing normal. There's nothing normal about Laura Loomer. She's insane. She's clinically insane, long history of schizophrenia in her DNA, her brother, her parents, like institutionalization in the family. She's a legit psychopath. She cannot control herself. And you notice that within 1 second of interacting with her. With James, he's much more smooth as an operator in winning people over, using the skills he has, the charisma he has to achieve his ends, which are very dastardly, and he does horrible things. But I view it much more sociopathically. He can still control himself moment to moment, even if internally he cannot, and he does all these evil things. So and narcissism and sociopathy go together a lot more than narcissism and psychopathy.
I was going to actually ask something real quick. One of my favorite classes to teach is actually called Ethics of Leadership. And you talked about that online seminar, and you talked about ethics and the legal stuff, and then all the people that got thrown under the bus. And in my mind, I'm just like, that is a very unethical leadership kind of thing, because if you direct somebody to do something and they get in trouble, you step in. There's two things I thought about is that the stories, they seem like if they don't give him immediate accolades, he passes on them. Kind of like the story with Christian. It's like, oh, he's like, I can't grandstand that, I'll say he can, and he does. And then what Kayla said is that there seems to be a pattern of, you're the big person on it, you're the one who does it, and so he chooses the person below you to prop up with him, because then they can't take the credit for all the hard work they did. And how he talked about gaslighting, it just seems like it's like the way he appreciates you is by beating you down so you stay submissive, so then you accept that. And just building on that, I'm like, so what does, so in that ethics and legal stuff, what advice does he actually give in those segments, if you can get into it? Because I was in Minnesota, I'm in Wisconsin, there's certain things I can do differently depending on what side of the border I'm on. But if you can speak to the thing, how he passed on something that you thought might have been oh, this would be really good. This is something that the nation should know, but then it wasn't something he'd grandstand off of. Matt kind of said it. I got to say, the cult of personality, with my small Twitter account, I've gotten hit with that because I criticized Tim Pool, and I had somebody jump at me, and then I called Robert Bard's boss baby lawyer, and people really hated me for that.
Robert Bard is a real piece of work. I had a confrontation with him in Milwaukee at the RNC, and that descended into a shouting match and him running away. You know, a lot of these guys are total keyboard warriors. Now, Robert Barnes is a special case. You know, a friend of mine, David Reboy, says physiognomy doesn't lie. He's like, you know, 5'2" and 280 pounds and just kind of waddles around and is just a really just disgusting human being in every way. And the lies he said on his pod about all of us, you know, if you don't like criticism on Twitter, then you probably shouldn't be on Twitter. And if you don't like it, I would not want anyone to walk a day in my shoes because, you know, I'm getting smacked at all day long. And you know what? It doesn't bother me. I mean, if you have a healthy self-worth, the funny thing is with James, I used to call it his bowling syndrome, named after Eric Bowling. When he did the crossing the Rio Grande with the Osama bin Laden mass, which by the way was very, very good work and led to a congressional hearing with McCain grilling Jay Johnson, who was, I think, head of DHS at the time. Everybody, including CNN, like covered it even like in a positive way. Even fucking Candy Crowley, that dumb yutz who rigged the Romney debate in 2012. She even said, you know, did a segment, he's back, not Osama bin Laden, but James O'Keefe covered it. It wasn't even that like, you know, negative coverage. It was just coverage. Eric Bowling said on Fox News, this stunt was stupid. And James called me like almost in tears. Why do they hate me? And I'm like, are you fucking joking, dude? You have like 6,000 pieces of positive attribution and one dude who you should give not a shit about. Personally, I'm friendly with Eric Bowling. I like Eric Bowling. Disagree with him on his take. He's a talking head. He said what he said that day. But James was so fixated on it for months and months. Why would he condemn me like this? Why would he not, you know, extol the virtue of my work? And I'm like, who cares? Who cares? But that's also a facet of narcissism. Everybody has to be on board. If you're not a sycophant, then you're an enemy. And you can't for the life of him understand how everybody would not be licking his balls ad nauseum.
Yeah, I think that they were genuinely shocked at my resignation letter because they're so used to people, you know, just being like, okay, you know, they gaslight you and then you go back into this submissive stance. I'm not that type of person. You know, I saw the writing on the wall. I spoke with Christian. He equipped me, you know, a year prior, you know, to look out for those red flags. And that was it for me.
Did you ever read the Clarice Schillinger resignation letter, the 100 days of, you read it, Brentley, I think it was in one of the Dropbox, the 100 days of torment or something like this. Like, I mean, he destroyed her marriage, he destroyed her life, and she really wrote him up. You know, her experience was like a 5-page missive, and it was very, very powerful and very heartfelt about how evil he was and his duplicity.
I've tried to reach out to her because I would love to, you know, speak with her, but I haven't had a chance to. So if anyone has her contact, I would love to. I
do. I think she's dealing with her own personal stuff that she has to deal with, and all catalyzed by working for James for 3 months.
Yeah. Yeah. But, you know, so it's really, it's very interesting. I think just learning about all these issues and then, you know, the identifying the key problems, right? So there were many moments where these red flags would come up, especially in regards to Brentley, you were speaking about the New York Times piece that, you know, I was the whistleblower for that. And, you know, I saw this all happening, right? We got to reach out to these people. We have to send them cameras. And it was just like, go, 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 go. And I think it was around September 13th, we had this conversation with our lawyer. And I got off the phone call and was literally in tears. I was like, oh my God, like what we're asking people to do. Our lawyer was like, there's red tape all over this. Oh, yeah. You know, like, please, like, be aware, be super careful with how you talk to people. You know, I had like a very tight script of, if you are interested in recording and happen to document something, you can send us that footage and we will review it. You know, it was so, I knew that what I was asking people to do could have legal ramifications. I did not want to have another J6 situation where the people that care about their country the most are now behind bars, right? I mean, that was extremely disturbing to me. I ended up bringing my concerns to the operation manager, who then told me, it sounds like, are you not about the mission?
That's all. It's always.
It's always about the mission.
And if somebody asks for a living wage, oh, so it's all about the money for you.
Right. Like you're talking basic needs. Oh, so it's about the money. Oh, why are you obsessed with the spotlight?
Like he
Oh,
gaslit
like,
that dude.
it's just
Apollo.
like,
It's a trap.
so
It's you either, they choose, it's like if you point out the money issue, all of a sudden you're a brigand, all you're concerned about is the money.
Good word.
And if not, then it's like they hit you with the mission. So
with James, it's also so I guess you're not really a good Catholic or a good Christian. So he plays, and this from a guy who's absolutely godless, but likes to pretend like he's a paragon.
So he's really good at speaking the Christian lingo.
Oh, when he did that Eric Metaxas bit, the price is your life. If your price is not your life, then you cannot do what I do. Oh, bullshit. Your price is, donor money to spend on flights to trashy whores.
yeah. So, to answer the question about the ethics side of things, I don't remember word for word what was in that course, but what I was seeing was incredibly unethical and exploitive behavior. And it was, our Act Blue investigation. I don't know if you guys watched any of that.
That actually was an investigation taken from another group that did it a year previous in Maryland.
It was so off the charts. I had gotten back off of maternity leave. I was pregnant while working for him. So, I mean, people would tell me like, we don't even know how to find this, right? I mean, it was just backbreaking work over here. And I get back like mid-July and
Okay.
Okay. I have one of my kiddos, they broke in.
Oh, by the way, James hates kids and pets, just for the record.
Yes, he does. He really
he's super
does.
against women. And if you ever say you're going to get pregnant, he won't, he won't have you as an employee. I mean, we've talked about this and it's in the audit. I mean, the threats he made to women at PV, like if they get pregnant, the way he treated a woman who had had a miscarriage who worked for us. I mean, evil, evil shit. And so some of these, trophy wife, ornamental donors, who are in love with him because banging the tennis pro is not exotic enough. I've told some of them, if you had a granddaughter or a daughter and you saw what, you would never let any of them near him. And with all the stuff coming out that JOKPT, the eponymous JOKPT, who none of us know who they are, and everyone's like, oh, it's you. I'm like, dude, I would do it under my own name. Are you kidding? I'm doing it anyway. I wish I had the time to commit to this investigation of one of the most evil figures of the American right.
Yeah, totally. But, just going back to Act Blue, I had just gone back off of maternity leave, right? And they gave me 2 weeks paid, 1 week unpaid to recover from a C-section. Okay. And they were like, you need to be grateful that we're even paying for you to do this, right? Or like giving you 2 weeks paid. It was just horrendous. But yeah. I mean, and in California, I'm in California. The father, not even the mother, the father can get a year granted for paternity leave.
Yeah, well, that's a little bit too much like Europe.
It's a little extra, but just to like give, the woman actually birthing the child gets two weeks paid, 1 week unpaid.
And this from a guy who claims to be pro-life.
It's just crazy. But, so I get back. And James is like, okay, I need you to do this Act Blue investigation. Like, here you go. And I'm like, I've never heard of Act Blue. We were working with this guy named Peter Bernager. And, he's a decent guy, but apparently The Guardian did a whole article on him that he does these like habitual lawsuits. Like he just is always filing lawsuits and nothing ever goes anywhere. They started fining him. To where he owed like over $2,000. They fined him $1 per every lawsuit that he filed. And there was over 2,000. So we're working with this guy. We're trying to like empower citizen journalists. You guys can toss that entire Act Blue investigation out the damn window. Okay. None of it was factually accurate. None of it, the FEC.gov website and the Election Watch website all had different data, different numbers. We did this whole story that was published when, Act Blue top donor, turns out it was Win Red. It was just disastrous. And we have all these attorney generals. I had a meeting with multiple attorney generals staffers, talking to them about different data points. And I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I've never read fec.gov documents, like it was just ridiculous. And we did not have time. It was literally me. So I'm talking to all these different citizen journalists, all these different attorney general's offices, one person for an entire nationwide investigation over a beat that I've never covered in my life. And, it's this like unrealistic deadlines. Oh, just get it out, right? So the ethic part of it, there is no ethics. It's just get the story, package it together and get it out. Like just, don't check for accuracy. Don't be thorough. There was no time for that. There was no space, right? So the Act Blue tossed that thing out the window. Very exploitive, very unethical, totally inaccurate data. The election beat, I'm so grateful that the New York Times actually covered that, because they had, and I sent this to you, Brentley, they wanted to do an investigation in Maricopa County. They actually met up with people, gave people cameras, and I believe it was the attorney of Maricopa County stood up and was like, this is actually illegal. And if you do this, you will be held accountable, and these people will actually go to jail. Like, she created this whole statement. So I feel like,
well, James always has had a Solzhenitsyn complex where his dream is to be falsely imprisoned. Now he's done enough bad shit. I'm sure he will end up in prison at some point, but he will claim it's a false imprisonment and rile up the mob to, take that narrative and run with it. But he believes that, like, no, you have to go to jail for, the mission. You have to be willing to. Ultimately, generally, it's not his ass on the line. He puts other people on the line. But he, again, this is his own fantasies, play into this of, false imprisonment. Like, he thinks this is something that is, will be accrue to his legacy. Now, the irony is he will not be going to jail for protecting a source or journalism. He'll go to jail for, some pedestrian, nonprofit fraud, criminal fraud, theft, maybe drugs, because apparently he's now a junkie addicted to benzos. And I don't know if it sounds like from what JOKPT exposed, he was using somebody else's prescription. That's illegal. And if you transport that across state lines, it's federal. So, he will end up, everyone, the more, as he likes to quote MLK, the moral arc of the universe bends toward justice. And I agree with that, even though it can be in zigs and zags. And he will get his. There's no doubt about that. But the lawyer aspect you mentioned on on both of these cases is, I think, very, very germane. We went through so many great lawyers because they didn't tell him what he wanted to hear. The law should be bent. As he's speaking out of one side of his mouth, we follow the letter of the law to a T. Then he's, doesn't really give a shit about it and wants lawyers to figure out ways to bend it, to adhere to his will. And if they can't, because it's black and white, which it frequently is, like filming at election polling sites, on election day, he says, find me a lawyer who, can tell me what I can do, not what I can't do, or how I can do it, how I can achieve my objective. It's all words with him. I mean, there's no actual morality there whatsoever. So him teaching a class on journalist ethics to me is always hilarious.
It's
least ethical person.
Really incredible. And that's, when you get in, you're like, wow, this guy's about ethics and telling the truth and, exposing the corruption. And it's all, that's who he is. It's just so mind blowing. And that's why I'm so grateful for people like Matthew and Christian and all the former PV employees, because, and his ex-girlfriend and the donor that I spoke with, it's like, there's so many affirmations of, what you went through is wrong, but it's also a habitual pattern.
I did not have Alexander Rose on my bingo card becoming, a a fighter for truth, you know, she got fucked over by him in a big way. And to be honest, I think she's been nothing but heroic now in dealing with it head on and addressing it and publicly commenting. She has nothing to gain from it, given her own stature, her own career, both in real estate and in reality TV. But she, you know, and I've talked to her a bunch in the last couple months since she realized the depths of depravity and the gaslighting and the cheating and the abuse that he put her through. And she, you know, was not always the best behaved. I think it came from a place of ignorance, you know, spurring him on during the blow up in Q1, Q2, 2023. But I mean, here she is, you know, telling the truth about what transpired and sharing the information, her experience. And that's, I think, very heroic as well, that somebody, you know, even being on the wrong side of an issue, recognizing it and then, you know, sharing the truth about it. I have a lot of respect for her at this point.
Yeah, I was thinking, kind of the question I had is because, like, I always find it kind of odd that he uses Veritas, because, like, using Latin words, especially like in our culture, gives a big kind of like nod to church. Like, whether you're Protestant, you use a word like Veritas, your mind kind of thinks of like liturgy. And what Matt kind of talked about, like the non-Christian thing. And one thing that Kayla probably speak to too is that the rampant sexism towards women, that the devaluing of women. And I don't know how to word this as delicately as I might, but it almost seems like women are just thrown out there like meat products to get these men to confess something on camera, and women are just tools to him, and just how unchristian, unfamily values that is. That you know that women just don't have any value than to just get him something. And I was thinking about too, like in some states, I don't know, like if you're recording a date, if someone's coached, like that could be considered an intimate partner reaction. If they're ever told that, like, and just how like the quality of life of women in that organization compared to just a general guy.
Well, the undercover journalists who are female, and look, this is, you know, a technique of espionage, spy games, extracting information, which undercover journalism is a facet of this methodologically. The honeypot is not a new technique. It works now at PV, where we had some legal structures in place, and you know we had grown-ups also at the helm, which is why, especially in its later stages, it was so effective and did such great work. Was the people there? You know, there was nothing untoward. There was never an intimate act. There was no kissing, sleeping with, like that was always deemed a bridge too far, and that would have opened it up to the intimacy issues. And of course, you know, letter of law, spirit of law on wiretapping, taping, following consent law state to state were always key. I don't know how tight it is at OMG, but at PV it was very, very tightly managed. But he views women obviously as a tool for the journalism, which will then derive video content he can get clicks from, adulation, all that. But 90% of his view towards females is they're just receptacles for him. Come dumpsters, which is why he has, you know, we've seen the messages with the women we have who there's a certain archetypal female in the fanatics that come to him that he then exploits for sex. I mean, they all look like trashy strip club whores. I mean, that's very consistent. All you got to do is, you know, see JOKPT's, you know, deep analysis of all the messages he's gotten and posted. I mean, like, this is very archetypal. And I think he posted some other stuff recently, and I'm sure there's more. I don't know how big a team this is, but they're going through 10 years worth of data, everything that was on the server, every, you know, message, agglomerated message bucket dump that they have. I'm still seeing things all the time that I had no idea on, like we noticed, you know, in the last there was, I think it was a dump where one of the employees, and this was still during late PV time, you know, he was having an employee bring one of his slam pieces to church, you know, because he wasn't going, he was busy. So he had a junior employee squire around this, you know, stripper type out of this archetype to church. So, I mean, the whole thing. And then there's stripper videos with like crosses and, you know, JL, the point you made about the Latin at the very beginning of Veritas, and when he named it Project Veritas, which, by the way, it's a very good name. It conveys a lot. He used to cite a lot. I remember we'd be, you know, doing presentations or talking to groups and donors, and he would say that sort of the ethos was bringing Veritas to the Vulgate, which was, if my history is correct, Saint Jerome, who translated the Bible from Latin into lingua franca, which was bringing Veritas to the people, the masses, bringing the truth, bringing God's word, bringing the Old and New Testament. In the Middle Ages, it was only the quote unquote educated who joined, the clergy and the liturgical roles could study this in depth. And so I think it was Saint Jerome who brought Veritas to the Vulgate, and that was what was a governing ethos for James in constructing Project Veritas. Now, a little bit of fame combined with his brain chemistry, the heredity, and whatever else led to this shit going off the rails. And the Veritas was a mechanism to deliver content that, again, he would just get the rose petals thrown at his feet. That's what he was looking for. It wasn't about the truth. And we've seen that in the recent period, especially, that so much of the shit presented. I mean, now his videos and the stuff he does, I mean, he's taking credit for Project Veritas' CNN lawsuit that is moving forward off a defamatory comment by, I don't remember if it was Anna Navarro, one of the people on CNN, and PV sued. And it was under when James was still there, but he's long gone, and PV kept that suit going. And he's doing videos, I, me, I did this case. He has nothing to do with this case at this point, but he's doing videos saying like, this is a big victory for me, pumps his chest up and does like Mark Levin's show and says, we're winning, I got this. Meanwhile, he has no locus to this case. He's not on the case. He's not a litigant. He's not a party. He's not paying for it. He's not going to be called. So, again, lies for content, clicks, clout, and cash, just on a perennial basis.
Over substance is one of the things that I noticed.
Totally. Really, and part of that is the right-wing media ecosystem that feeds that. They want heroes because of the rugged individualism of the right. They want that cult of personality. Charlie Kirk, who's an absolute fucking weasel, is held up by a lot of the donor class as a paragon of virtue. I've known him since he was 19. He started Turning Point in Illinois. Yeah, and he started off as an earnest kid, and he's become a total megalomaniac, and really did a big strategy drift. And it started in 2014 with Rauner's election as governor in Illinois. He's like, fuck it, I'm in politics now, which is totally at odds with, building a nonprofit to educate students on campuses. But now he's a political figure. He's a political talking head. He's got a political radio show. He's got a private plane from his private media stuff. He's not a moron like James.
Yeah, that success early is very dangerous. It can go to your head.
Oh, totally.
It can encourage the worst traits to come out because you're being affirmed by reality. You have a little success in something. And I think this happened to James a lot.
And also keep in mind that it takes a certain kind of person, just like politics, right? Who goes into politics? Those who can handle getting shit, hurled at them. Those who are willing to, kiss babies. I always used to say that, people always ask me, would I ever want to go in politics? Like, no, because I like telling the truth and what I think. And when you have to campaign, you have to tell every different faction of a constituency, every interest group, what they want to hear to win their votes. You have to talk out of both sides of your mouth. You have to kiss their, ugly babies and like pretend you like it. And I mean, I don't have kids. I'm sure I'll love my baby, but I'm not working in a nursing or a daycare. I'm not really into, hanging around with 3-year-olds and pretending I like them and kiss them for the camera. But that's what a politician has to do. And if you have that personality by nature, then there is something a little bit different about you. Now, there are some people who can get past that and still do good things, but a lot of these people, we see what goes on in DC. We see the behaviors of these people. And then if you do something like Charlie or James or Tim Pool or any of these, or Benny Blowjob Johnson, BJ, he, from what I hear, they have this, if they want to be in front of the camera, they want to talk, if they believe that every single exposition that comes, out of their mouths is gold, that they shit gold, just by virtue of them saying the words, then you're already predisposed to being a personality that's going to go off the rails, be out of control, be a prima donna, be a megalomaniac. So it's not coincidental that we see so many of these people, even if they start out earnest, as James did, as Charlie Kirk did, as, many of them have, and they become absolute fucking nightmares to the people around them, to their ability to lie, their propensity just to say, to get content and drive those clicks.
Yeah, man, you said something that kind of piqued thing that I didn't quite make the connection when you said it, that the Latin Bibles often called the Vulgate Bible, and then being translated, and talking about these personalities. We talked about Laura Loomer, and you brought up other people. Do a lot, behind the scenes, because like I said, I'm on the outside kind of looking at these people, seeing their content. Do a lot of them kind of have that trait, when we're speaking like James O'Keefe, like they're a crusader, that they're bringing this truth and light, and it's like if you're against me, you're against the holy O'Keefe Media Group, you're across the holy Timcast, you're against the holy Sorry, the puppy demanded attention. But
My guy's over there sleeping. He's old.
I got two Bostons. I think the older Boston took both the bones. I apologize, but like almost like if you're against it, you're against the holy turning point in USA. You're against these like holy institutions, and it kind of, in some ways, like empirically, like what I've heard from other people and what you're saying, there seems to be that mentality with a lot of these groups that they're on this just mission, and standing against them is like a cardinal sin. And I don't know if I'm off base with that.
No, totally. And if these personalities, even if they start out as earnest crusaders on mission, at some point, as driven by their egos and megalomania and the affirmation of the mob, they start conflating what the mission is. And the mission goes from something that is, generated from righteous indignation of what they see in the world as a journalist, as an activist, as an organizer, and becomes me. That's the mission. And certainly, James, Charlie, Poole, Luke Rutkowski, I think, is a little too mid-witted for this. I don't think he has a triple-digit IQ. But the willingness to forgive basic things that any normal person would view as wrong. And that's my issue with Luke, is like, he knew the shit. And I remember I ran into him in a bar in Miami like 9 months ago. And I said, dude, the fucking shit that you pulled on your pod on Tim Pool's, he was fucking using money inappropriately. He goes, oh, well, that shouldn't be illegal. It's him. I'm like, how dumb are you? Then this is, a guy who was on the pod with Tim when they were saying to James, oh, donors would want you to have an airplane hangar filled with Ferraris and private planes because you're so effective and you're so good at what you do. Well, guess what, dude? It's a nonprofit, which allows you the privilege of raising money tax exempt that fuels a mission. But the trade-off is you have to be a fiduciary and not use the money inappropriately. Very straightforward, strict guidelines. And if you did not do that, or you do not do that, on a practical basis, it becomes a money laundering operation, becomes a slush fund, which is what we have seen happen over and over again in this movement. The NRA being the most high-profile example with Wayne LaPierre and the C-suite there, buying, bespoke suits with donor money and all the private travel. I mean, you have to actually have a best practice of being a steward of capital. The same way, I'm a banker and broker, Wall Street guy, and I have to do tests every 3-6 months on money laundering, on know your customer, on appropriate use of funds, of recommendations. Like, you have to do things to protect the public who can easily get scammed by con artists. And there's a reason these regulations are in place. And they're generally very common sense and very justifiable, just on a basic level. And, here's Tim Pool and Luke Rutkowski spinning, oh no, he can do whatever he wants. And then when I meet Luke privately at a bar and I'm talking to him, I was like, dude, what the fuck? And he's like, oh, no, he can do whatever he wants. Like, you guys should just figure out how to brush it under the rug. And I'm like, I've heard that before from Charlie, from Steve Bannon. Oh, brush it all under the rug. No, dude, there's criminal liability for everybody who's an accomplice, not even a beneficiary, just an accomplice. You know something, you say nothing. You are now complicit in a crime taking place. And that's what this whole, audit and all the PV shit, the whistleblowers inside, and, the blow up, and then him running away claiming victimhood. No, there's a meritorious case that is working its way through the court system that Project Veritas, as it exists in whatever form it still exists, has a legal responsibility to go after, knowing what they know, with a third-party audit from a credible law firm, the same law firm that did the NRA, Dorsey Whitney. They did very deep data dives on forensics, on financials, on testimonies from people, and triangulate. Nothing in there hasn't been triply and quadruply and quintuply corroborated. And now Project Veritas, if it wants to keep its C3 status, has to go out and, wend its way through court to get the money back. And if that means, civilly as well for James and the liability, he's going to have to write a big check because he used money improperly.
Yeah, and there really are legal issues with this, right? With Project Veritas, there was 140 people that either left or were fired within 4 to 5 years. And, my experience at OMG, 10 employees quit or were fired within 10 months, right? And so the employees, the people that are working in these organizations, they have rights, and there's laws that protect their rights. And so, what I'm looking at right now is, everyone that was employed at OMG is on 1099, they're contractors, but they're being treated as if they're employees. Now, there's a legal issue with that, because when you're a 1099, when you're a contractor, and, I had to learn all this, as soon as I got out, I'm like, wait, what just happened here? But as a 1099, you present to them. This is my service. This is what I can do for you. And you're allowed to work with other people. Well, with me, I was treated as an employee with no benefits, no medical, no overtime, right? And that's huge because we always had overtime. I was working around the clock. And this person, James O'Keefe, you are on call. You are expected to be on call 24/7, 360 days. Like, you are continuously on call, available. I ignored my Telegram for a weekend. When I was, I was like, look, I'm going to take some time. I'm going to think about my life here. It was around October 14th. Right before I sent in my resignation letter, I looked at my Telegram, 80 missed messages on a Saturday in an all group staff chat.
And by the way, if he messages you individually and you don't respond, then the new mission for him internally, because of his psyche, is not whatever it is he wanted you to do. It's, why are you not responding to me? Where are you? Why are you not in this? Why aren't you doing the necessary work? And you'll get 80 messages from him. He'll spend 6 hours, hitting you just so that you can feel bad about yourself because, you had to take your kid to the doctor. And that fits in with the narcissism and no empathy.
Yeah. So there's wage issues, there's labor issues, like Matthew was saying, there's so many different lawsuits. There's an actual settlement, a class action lawsuit that was brought against James with 6 former Project Veritas employees. They won over $200,000 in, lost wages that they were not properly paid out. So, there are legal consequences to bad behavior within organizations. And I think, the people like Tim Pool and Luke Rosowski and all the people Matthew mentioned that ignore it and push it to the side are really doing, it's an injustice to the people who are victimized while they're a part of this organization, or organizations.
They're really doing their audience a disservice because they're peddling comfortable lies when, their brand, their whole established thing is like, we're the alternative media. We're like, the rebellious truth tellers on the internet. When here they are, it's like, dude, you're literally doing the same thing that the establishment does all the time. You're covering up some bad behavior of your buddies because you're both financially benefiting. I'm like,
it's a grift. It's a grift. The crusade became a grift very quickly with these people because they were enabled. And the same mechanisms that allow us to fight on the right in the media, because since the 90s, the internet, the barriers to entry have been broken down, whether it's Substack, social media, people can find their voice and don't need the arbiters and the gatekeepers of getting things across to audiences. You can build an audience on merit now. That same thing, the derivative effect, is it has allowed the grifters to build an audience and utilize that mechanism to grift while pretending to be a crusader, pretending to stand for something, pretending to live by ideology and consistency and ethics and morality. And it's a facade. And I think somebody needs to do a serious documentary about the right-wing media ecosystem and, the rise and fall of James O'Keefe as a symbol of, all of these personalities. Like, I worked with Steve Bannon before he was a figure, writing for Breitbart 10, 12 years ago. And he's always been on the fringes and margins of doing what's legal and moral, just on a personal basis. But like, he is, off the rails as well. He was, and we talked about this last pod we did, calling me and saying, "Oh, we don't give a fuck about the law. Sweep it under the rug. I don't care if he's diddling kids." Yeah, sure, I know he's a total flamer and all the musical theater shit. No offense, apparently we all love Hamilton and Les Mis. I like your.
I actually hate Hamilton. I don't like.
No, it's fucking.
Not a Les Mis fan either.
I don't like Lin-Manuel Miranda politics and personality, but it's a brilliant, brilliant work. The music, the history, the libretto. It's all fucking.
I mean, people like it, so it's not my thing.
We can do a musical theater debate. Maybe we'll bring Jimbles O'Kimbles in for the musical theater debate. Talk about Oklahoma, or as we call it sometimes in the group chat.
And speaking of Oklahoma, seriously. People need to understand there was a flood in their office space.
Oh, yeah.
An elderly man almost died. He was submerged underwater.
Who we all loved.
And James is like, don't worry about it. Just keep working. I'm doing this play over here. Just get back to work.
Yeah, oh yeah, no, and this guy was like, we don't even know if James knew his name. I mean, James didn't know the name of most of the employees for, it would take a year or two before he'd remember their name. He would just point at you. I mean, because he doesn't give a shit about people. People are tools. We talked about this a lot on the 6 Hour Pod. He views them as screwdrivers that he can plug into, when his boat gets a fuel jam. Like,
so true.
People are just tools.
Could you pull up some of those photos that I sent you? Because I want to help, I want to, I guess, ring the alarm bell for people of how James like goes about getting people, so this one right here, it was very windy. My hair looks crazy. It is what it is. But James,
I think you look beautiful.
Oh, you're sweet. Thank you. James, I got this swiper story and he decides to get this private plane, fly to Fresno to meet me. Okay. And that was a huge moment because, you're doing citizen journalism. You're in the trenches, you're muckraking, you're, finding the truth, shouting it to the world, and the abyss just echoes back at you. Right. So this moment for me was so special. It was so monumental. It's like this person that I've always looked up to is recognizing my work and flying to meet me. It was like, oh my God, this is so huge, right? So that's how like he hooks you in, okay? And after this moment, he was always available to me. Like every single day for 10 months for, within a 24-hour span of time, this man made himself available to me, right? Like, so I would say something, he'd be like, oh, I'm on this call. I'll get right back to you, right? So go to the next picture. Let me see him. So, that I feel like should have been a bit of a red flag because like, why is this person who, is so high level, why is he making himself so available to me? Like, it was just, that's how they kind of like rope you in.
Yeah.
Right.
Add you to his harem the same way a sultan or a pasha who's a bigamist does. And then after, the honeymoon period of you're now in the family, then the beatings start.
Yeah, totally. So this picture is really, really important because this was our film crew. This was it.
Who's still there? Who's still there?
So, no one.
Okay.
No one is currently still there.
Good photo curation then on your part. Perfect narrative fit.
Oh, the person that took the picture is still there currently. But we have Ryan in the, starting from left and going around the circle. So this was one of our film editors for Line in the Sand, or a videographer. We have another videographer right here. This is Debbie. She was like his personal assistant. And then here's me in the corner, 7.5 months pregnant. I am the source expert. I am the locations expert. I am the content expert. They made me fly here. They were like, if you do not come to this event, we will not have a film because this is the storyboarding moment and you have all the information in your brain and we need to get it all out on paper. And then, there's James sitting on the couch. And then here's our producer, Aaron, who he's a great guy. He was totally heartbroken.
Which one is Aaron?
He's, far, the guy's kind of sitting across from me.
To the right of James?
Yeah, right there. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, great guy. He was genuinely disturbed at how everyone in the team was treated.
And James does find good people because people, A, he can crowdsource from a huge pool, and yes. B, people are attracted to something adventurous, interesting, mission-driven, a crusade. So you find some, interesting people, and then you find, of course, some Laura Loomer types.
Yes. Yeah. So Ryan was fired, and that was a really sad moment for me because what's so crazy, we were actually neighbors in LA, which was like, how does that happen? I don't know, but super kind guy, really great at what he does. And he just had these expectations of him, like these quick turnarounds that were just so ridiculous. Vincent right here, he was another videographer, editor. he quit because he had to do like this crazy all-nighter, and it was just insane pressure. I can't remember if Debbie was quit or fired.
I think she quit. I think she quit after the dildo debacle.
Oh yeah, it was the dildo, but also
Brentley is back focused.
He accused Debbie of doing drugs in front of a bunch of professionals, which was just like insane. It was like, what the hell? Aaron probably not ever going to work with James ever again in his life. I mean, I don't want to speak for him, but he was genuinely disturbed. There was things he told me off the record, but he was very saddened by how our entire crew was treated. And when he found out that I was, blacklisted and shoved to the side to be able to stand with the team that I created, it was really devastating for everybody. Can we go to the next photo?
Next slide, please.
Yeah. So here's again, like, we're in this house, we're storyboarding. It's just another, moment of getting all of the content, all of the leads, all of the sources, and building out the film. And I wanted to show you guys this because this crew was so small. Like I was the journalist. That was it, assigned to this. And so we can go ahead and go to the next one. And by the way, this house had like cats, and oh my God, my allergies were so bad. I'm pregnant as hell. Just seeing their struggling.
The house had cats. James hates animals.
Oh yeah. It was
hates
really
animals,
bad.
which also is always a sign of generally hating animals is a sign of both a socio and a psycho, but especially a psycho. I mean, it's very like Norman Batesy.
I like animals, but I'm personally allergic. So it was like the struggle was so real.
Yeah, no, my mom's a crazy cat lady. I grew up with cats and I'm also allergic. And she said, the cats stay. You can sleep outside.
Oh my gosh.
But I do love cats.
So this, if you can like zoom in, you can see the like pure depression on my face.
Yeah, really.
Because, this moment is, I'm just like, what the fuck is going on, guys?
Who are these people and why is it like 3-to-1 female to male?
Yeah, so
hangers on.
This is the red carpet premiere in Newport. And the whole thing is just chaos, right? James sends this list. Here's all the people I want to stand at the end. I'm excluded. I'm like,
this is insane. You did all the work, but that's why. By the way, you want to know why? And I wanted Christian on for this. He brought Cochran, Peter Pan, the Pinterest insider, to the White House and not Christian because Cochran was the biggest sycophant. I mean, he was dangling from his balls like ball sweat on a regular basis. Like James could do no wrong. And even he went on Tim Pool after he did, his own thing and, was asked about James because James is a hero, what the board and the other employees, they're all wrong. And like, he knew the truth, but the ultimate sycophancy. So I texted him how big a fucking weasel he is, or midget weasel.
Oh, good. Case. Yeah.
So, I mean, you're not the first, assuredly.
And that's
who are these people?
Process. Yeah. So, just a little backstory. James is like, okay, these are who I want standing. He listed, all the journalists that were like on camera, apparently. And I'm just like, hey, James, I kind of see this as a graduation moment for me. Like this is my first big project. And, we got on the TNC network or TCN. Like, I would love to be able to stand with my peers. And he was like, what's your obsession with the spotlight? He had his operations manager sit down with me and threaten me, stating, we know that your family relies on your paycheck, so I'd be careful with what you say. This woman in the black sunglasses with the sparkly outfit, blonde. Her name's Kristen. She was the one who was like the replacement who, came in at the end. The night before the premiere, she tells me, I haven't seen the documentary all the way through. They want me to do the red carpet interviews. Could you help guide me on what's going on? And I'm just like, hey guys, I've done events before. I can help host this, red carpet interview. I have a skill set in this area. And they're just like, no, you stay in your lane. an hour before the red carpet happens, they're like, can you please help Kristen? She doesn't know anything. And I'm just like, no shit, guys, but whatever. So here's my face. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? We got Braden right next to me. He's like the undercover. He thinks he's like the coolest guy. He's James's yes man right now.
Who's
You
the
know,
guy on James's left? Sunglasses, beard?
no, this is
Yeah, no, that's great. And who's the guy on his other side?
This is Chris. This was my first source that I ever spoke to with OMG. He does great work on the border. He's a really kind-hearted man. I ended up bringing him onto the team to help assist with operations because he had a long history in that, and he apparently became the like assistant director or something, like, I don't know, but he did a ton of work, right? So he doesn't fly. He had to drive hours and hours. He had to help manage the crew. He did a lot for us. I mean,
He's not afraid of the border, but he's afraid of getting in an airplane.
He he's a vet.
Yeah.
And he has apparently PTSD from the Air Force.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So, and then here is our lovely fundraiser who was fired. She's no longer there.
Who? Which one?
Denise, gold dress. And
I
then
like
if
the
you,
chief entertainment, by the way, at least finally some truth in advertising. Everything he does is for entertainment purposes only.
we have Jillian, the girl standing next to me. She's so sweet. She works her ass off. I like pray for her safety and her sanity. She was hit by the hurricane and was literally having to work like in Florida in the hurricane in her bathtub because James doesn't, care about people's lives. And
yeah. Force majeure doesn't apply in at OMG. You're either for the mission. The price is your life.
The price is your life. Yes. So her life in the bathtub doing work for OMG while there's a hurricane. This is like Kat, this girl, other sunglasses, newest member. She's like, I think is an assistant. I don't know. And then here's Steven, the demon man that everyone thinks is like highly demonic.
Every demon needs a deputy demon.
Yes. Yeah. So he is James's bulldog. If there's an issue that James does not want to deal with,
which is every issue.
Yes, you will be dealt with by Steven. I can't tell you. I mean, the amount of times I cried.
On the right edge.
Okay, the one that's kind of cut off.
He's kind of cut off. Yeah.
Okay. What about on the left edge?
That guy, I don't know. There was like a lot of people that I was like, "Who are you?"
What about the red dress in front of Jillian?
This woman, I believe, was our producer's wife. But what's so funny to me is, they were gaslighting me. Like, what's your obsession with the spotlight? This red carpet was like maybe 20 feet long. And the people that were at the event, they walked back and forth on this red carpet, fake boobs, fake lips, fake titties. I mean, the whole plastic, everything. And they're just standing there for 3 hours walking back and forth on this carpet. Like that's not me. Like, this was like maybe the one. I got like 2 photos here. It was the team that our producer made James do this. He's like, everyone get in, everyone, if it was up to James, none of us would have been here.
So even the red carpet was a LARP just for social media, Instagram stories and stuff like that. Oh, our great red carpet. And really it's just it's a content thing.
I was wondering how did we go from you not being included to you ending up in the picture?
So it was the moment for me that at the end of the film, they had everyone stand that was a part of the film at the end, and to be recognized for their work. And that was like the moment for me when, I never graduated college, right? So, that moment of walking across and you get your little hat or whatever the hell like it's a symbolic moment. right? Like there's energy to that. I wanted to stand with my team and just celebrate a moment.
And you
right?
invested so much of yourself in time, capacity, blood, sweat, and tears. But the
Blood,
only
sweat, and tears.
Well,
Yeah.
you really are sort of like recognizing your work, and it's frankly, it seems odd to not have you and everybody who worked on it there. You know what I mean? It's just like,
for James, the only bleeding, sweating, and crying that matters is his.
Well,
'Cause he
I
is
mean,
the brand.
you saw, that's why I wanted to show you guys that picture of our crew. You know, in the, when we were storyboarding, I was the only journalist in that room. You know, and that was assigned, this whole project was assigned to me to deal with. And I mean, it was literally insane. So I want to show you guys, what other photos did I share with you?
I love that this ended up on Tucker, with Tucker like disliking him intensely personally.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
TCN is not doing well and they need free content. So
okay, so can I share my screen? I'm gonna try to do
totally.
this.
I can swap over to yours.
Are you able to see this?
There he is. It's up.
Okay, so, you know, people are like, well, what did you do that you didn't get credit for? Okay, so, you know, this is, I'm going to break it down to you guys in detail. Okay, so what I would have to do is I would find a citizen journalist. You know, we'd throw out, hey, is anyone in New York that wants to be a citizen journalist? I'd get like 30 to 50 emails or, you know, DMs of people, hey, pick me. And then I'd have to go through and do OSINT and figure it out if they were legit and talk to them on the phone and then say, okay, yes, this is a person that we can equip to do a mission. So, you know, this guy Kai's is a great example. I found Kai's. I, you know, made sure cameras were sent out to him. He went into as an undercover citizen journalist to meet Pedro Rodriguez. This is like a big moment at the end of the film, you know. So this is the man Kai spoke with at the end. This is my conversation with James. You know, here's all of his information. I need assistance with the Spanish parts of the video, but the transcripts are done. So, you know, anytime we would go out, I would do the transcripts. I would find the key moments in the video, right? Then we would create field operations. So this is an example of my notes for a New York field op that we did. So, you know, having the location, having the important documents, here's the key employees, here's the addresses that we need to go to, here's the man that we want to talk to, here's the details of that. Here's, you know, another important point was the Randall's Island, right? I found that from a source. So every location that the film was at, it was in this similar format that I presented everything to James. So we have, you know, shelters on Randall's Island. You know, here's per location the investigation items that we need. You know, we're looking into voting. We're looking into, can you get fake passports? I'm talking about hundreds and hundreds of hours. I would even put in our legal briefings so that people on the team could be aware what's legal, what's not. You know, a table of contents. So I eventually got Chris, the guy with the glasses, he was the operations manager. Him and I would have all the data, all of my notes, and then we would just sit there and build out these, you know, operation brief sheets. So it's like daily breakdown. Here's what we're going to be doing on Monday. Here's what we're going to be filming on Tuesday. Here's what we're doing Wednesday. All the addresses that they would need. Here's a map of how you get there. I mean, it's so extensive. Here's all our volunteers. And if you could maybe like blur some of these people out, or I don't know, you know, I don't want you to get your video, you know, for doxing or whatever, but you know, here's our volunteers. I would find all the volunteers. I would make sure they would get the plane tickets. Oh, they can speak Spanish. There's Spanish translators.
By the way, can we talk about how dumb Spain is for a moment? Oh, that'd be an inside joke. Man, she's...
And so, you
know... Oh, no.
I think we lost her. She dropped out.
Oh, no. Spain's revenge.
Spain has struck back.
Yeah, she's one of the dumbest UCJs we ever had.
Wait, what is Spain somebody's like nickname or something?
Yeah.
Oh,
Middle Asian.
I thought you were talking about the country.
No. I love Mancante España. No,
There
Spain
she
was
is.
UCJ,
Sorry, guys.
her PV,
Yeah.
who dropped off and then went to OMG.
Oh, okay. Spain.
Yeah,
got
and
it.
I actually found her because we needed a Spanish translator, and then I actually ended up getting her a job with James because I was
Yeah,
like,
that's her main skill set, is she speaks Spanish. Everything else is pretty not
she does
beyond
well.
unremarkable. What?
Well, I think she does well in conversations, like getting information out of people. It's just when it comes to complex documents, there's no way. But yeah, so I mean, when people ask, well, what is it that you did? Why didn't you get credit? It's like, I just wanted to stand with my team, like that was all I was asking for all of that work, all of those moments, those hundreds of hours. And by the way, I wasn't just working on that. I was also doing production, writing narrations, for everything else that the organization was doing, because there was only 2 journalists there, like for the majority of the time I was working there. So people would sit there and look at me and be like, you're doing the job of 10 people, just so you know.
And you have 4 kids.
4 kids, a husband, a house I have to manage. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, you're a dynamo. And, James recognizes nobody's skills but his own. And even convinces, I remember my last conversation with him. I don't know if we talked about this in the last pod, but my last conversation with him, besides me texting him articles about how do you know you're a narcissist? I do that semi-regularly. The last conversation was that Wednesday before the Monday board meeting, where he was arguing with me about how great a manager and a leader he is. I'm like, all your people are afraid of you and they dislike you intensely. He goes, it doesn't matter. I want them afraid of me. Then they'll just do what I say. I'm like, okay, that's not management. That's not leadership. That's petty tyranny that will blow up and bite you in the ass when everybody leaves you, and even weaponizes everything against you because they really hate you. And of course that has happened in different various waves. But I mean, he really believes that people are tools for him, and his management style. He said, "Look at what I've built." I mean, I hate to paraphrase Hillary Clinton, but on some level, for a corporation, the whole idea of a corporation, for-profit or nonprofit, is that the sum of the parts. Adam Smith got this perfectly in The Wealth of Nations and Comparative Advantage, and Why Mercantilism Fails, is that a corporation and any economy to succeed is people with complementary skills come together to produce something greater than the sum of their individual output. Go back to I think it was Murray Rothbard's iPencil. At Foundation for Economic Education. Great essay, great video, great analysis of how is a pencil made, right? I mean, you've got graphite, you've got wood, you've got carving machines, you've got, packaging, you've got distribution. That's the whole idea of incorporation, is that you bring people together to create something greater than they could do individually. And James doesn't understand that at all. He believes that everything would just, because he envisions it and it comes from the wellspring of his mind, that all of a sudden that's execution. No, dude, execution. I mean, I'm a venture investor and I got a million great potential entrepreneurs who show me things. We're going to build this. Okay, well, how do you execute it? Oh, well, we'll build it. That's not execution. Ideas, opinions, birthdays, they're like assholes. Everyone has them. But execution, getting shit done, getting people to finding the right people. And the people at PV, and sounds like at OMG to some degree as well, were very, very good. And at PV, growing to 70 people and the amount of work, he would call me all the time and goes, these people suck. They don't do what I say. They're failures. I should fire them all. I'm the only one who knows how to do anything. I mean, he doesn't even know how to log into his accounts. He can't go a day or two without losing a phone or a pair of pants. I mean, if his head, like the old saying, if his head wasn't screwed on, it would fall off. He'd leave it somewhere.
I think what's so frustrating is it's so easy to do right? It's so easy to make a 1-minute post, or to take 1 minute to thank the people that have been
somebody in your office they're doing a good job. He never does.
Right. Or to let the entire team stand and celebrate a moment. But now it's like I'm having to talk to attorneys and lawyers and deal with cease and desist and go back and screenshot things and show, proving the burden of proof is on my shoulders to bring the evidence forward of like, this is all the things I've done and this is how I was wronged, when it could have just been, thank you so much for your hard work. And, let's celebrate this as a team.
But see,
But no,
the discrepancy there between the what you see as, a very simple, like, basic thing, and the psychology involved in people like James, who are like the thing that, like, I really like about the show, that I like to hit on a lot, is this theme of the sort of predatory mind and how people manifest in those behaviors and those red flags, so that more people out there in the land of the world will see these things, learn them, and, maybe head off an involvement with somebody who's like James, but it gives them enough ammunition that they can be like, wait a minute, I remember hearing something about this kind of behavior before. And that's the thing. And that's why I really like, it's sad. I like stories like yours, because they reveal a truth that is hidden, that is well concealed, and that's buried under layers of bullshit put out there by, the new, I think of them as the new corporate press. We have our Tim Pools and our alternative, our big name alternative people. And they manufacture this consensus reality. Well, it's basically the same thing that the old corporate press does. And
it's worse. It's worse because you don't get dental, you don't get medical, you don't get overtime, you don't have a 401k.
You have to work in an office where people find used dildos.
I would rather at this point work for
allegedly, according to JOKPT and internal. I wasn't there on the dildo side, so. Yes.
I did not witness it, but I've had 3 eyewitness testimonies confirming there was a used dildo inside of the kitchen at HQ that had fallen out of James's backpack. Whatever. But look, my empathy.
Whatever. Moving on.
I think that
we're so inured to crazy shit. It's like, just another day in the life.
I know, right? I think that it's really, really important to talk about creators and intellectual property. There's a reason why there's bylines. There's a reason why there's copyright laws and things such as plagiarism.
Fair use.
Because intellectual property is important. It matters.
Yeah, it's property. I mean, look at, I think we've talked about in the past, and I'm sure you've read about it, and Andrew Riley has not been shy tweeting about it, him having written James's 3rd book, and not only not on the copyright, but coerced under pressure to sign overall rights and the utilization of the work of PV capacity to do the research, to do the writing. And James, obviously, as he had previously, trying to privatize the upside. But I've done, my own thoughts on this. I asked him when the book was going to print, like, who are you going to put in the acknowledgements? And he said, nobody, we're not going to do acknowledgements. And to me, that was an acknowledgement in his own head as psyche. He knew he didn't even write it. If he acknowledges those who did, that would be like a wall come crashing down internally in his head, because he lives by lies. He tells himself lies. He believes he's a victim in everything that's transpired in the last 22 months.
Right. He's the victim. I'm this demon, this clout chasing demon, along with chief demon, Matthew Tyrmand.
Yeah, well, what's my motivation for my demonic behavior and victimizing him? I guess the jealousy, I wanted his life single white female style.
Oh, no, he said he would say that there's a gay fetish, an underlining
Well, that's something called projection. And he is one who always lectures the most about projection, which is a derivative format of his own projection, that he is the one always not only projecting, but teaching everyone about projection. So he projects the most.
It is, it's mind blowing.
So gay fetish.
I think the last thing that I noticed was that him retweeting an old video of you criticizing Trump during the primary season.
Yeah, that was weaponized already, and so that was something that I actually did the day after the board meeting. I'd already committed to go to Seat to Table in Naples and do a thing with Steve Cortez and John Cardillo, and I was, very public that I was pro DeSantis, a Floridian. I've known Ron since his first term member, and I thought he'd be amazing. Of course, I'm happy Trump won. Of course, I'm pretty, I'm really interested and excited about the things he seems now this time very committed to do. And I made a point that, I thought DeSantis was better, and I was, probably, I definitely was drinking because it's that kind of event. It was a fun forum and back and forth, and I was pretty aggressive, and I was also yelling because the space was really loud, so they spun it as I'm a maniac because look at me yelling, frothing at the mouth. But like if you were there, I was mic'd, but it was like super loud. Everybody was. It's in a supermarket sort of thing where they have a carved out space for events. It was just super loud. But like I'm happy to say I was wrong on that call. I mean, I still think DeSantis is great, and I hope he has a long career, and he's done great in Florida. But I was, wrong on some of my assessments of Trump, seeing how he came through this process and did a very, very good job and ran a great campaign and has a great mandate, one of the best on the right since, Reagan 84. It's amazing.
I also thought it was interesting that they brought that up as if to suggest that, you are somehow incredible.
Well, that was something Loomer pushed. And that's why it's funny that James tweeted this out the other day. That's something Loomer pushed in when this thing this was done February 7th. And I don't know if we talked about the April Moss part last year, because I ran into her then. That's a whole other story. She's trash and a total liar, clout chaser. But we did it February 7th. It went up like a week or two later, the video of it. And then Loomer jumped on it as, oh, this is proof DeSantis organized the coup, because she obviously hates DeSantis with a passion. She blames him, as Milo pointed out. She blames him for her multiple congressional losses. He was conspiring with the establishment to block her out. And the federal judge who ruled against her in care, as if a state governor has any oversight on a federal judge. But it happened in Florida. So, hey, if you don't stand with Loomer, because she's a psychopath and can't control herself. So she ran this whole bullshit that, DeSantis orchestrated the coup through me because I'm a DeSantis guy and James is pro-Trump and he's going to work to help Trump get elected. And the one credit to James as a pseudo-journalist is he's very apolitical, partially because politics is a personal thing. It's politics comes from the word polity, which is the people. So to be in politics, you have to engage with people. So he's apolitical because he doesn't know how to politic, to deal with people, to build relationships, coalitions, this kind of thing. But so Loomer weaponized this in February, March, got me a lot of shit on it. And again, BFD, I didn't lose any sleep over that. But for James to bring this up after it was weaponized so many times in March, April, May of last year and came out all the time.
Well, it's all he has. It's all he has to slander your name.
That's what I'm saying. It's like, this is the best oppo you have. And so he tweets it just because, the panty thief is going after him and the depositions are going. He's got nothing going on. So now I'm, again, a project to focus on is banging me out. And you know what? It fell in, got, the same views from the same cult. And I got the same, comments. I'm Mossad, I'm this, I'm that. I'm, an agent. I can't be trusted. I mean, I've got 12, 13, 14 years of a body of work of independent journalism that stands on its own merits, working with and for nobody, not paid by anybody. But, the digital pitchfork wielding sycophantic mob. And by the way, when has a mob ever been right about anything, especially on a first take hot take? Oh yeah, mob first take hot takes are always spot on. And so he knows that this is his weapon, is to, like he created death threats, and his lawyers said, you got to stop with the Pfizer shit. He's still doing it, because people, the crazies are out in for it. By the way, Robert Malone, we talked about him on the last pod. He wrote a whole article, op-ed about, if you don't think Pfizer orchestrated the James O'Keefe coup, then you don't know what's going on in the world. I mean, this dude is an absolute fucking whack job. So he's on my list on the spreadsheet as well, to do deeper dives into, the cult of personality on our side. But, the fact that James tweeted this out, and I got the same comments, it's all he has to try and weapon this. And the caption, the comment he put on this quote tweet was, when people tell you who they are, believe them, which is something that I've always said. So all his material rhetorically is things that he stole from others. And
it fits the pattern of behavior.
Yeah, he's a mime, that's what an actor is. I mean, he's a failed theater kid. It's funny to see all of us, we always talk about when he takes our lines. I see so many lines I coined that he uses regularly now. It always makes me smirk because it just reminds me of how vapid and empty he is as a human being, soulless, lacking all morals. But it was funny that he did tweet that out. I think I might have DM'd him on a certain social media platform after that, just a friendly hello. But
yeah, but that's another moment of, Matthew is asking, reaching out to Musk to the Doge thing, and it's another moment of blacklisting. You know, he tries to actively blacklist people, and that was my take on it. You know, it's like, oh look, James blacklisting someone else. You know,
well, I mean, you can't blacklist me
near someone else's name.
Because I've done nothing wrong, and everyone who knows me knows that, and everyone who even watches our pods can see the kind of person I am. And I don't work for anybody directly. I work with people. I consult, I contract, I do different projects. But, you know, good luck, you know, running me out of things that I've built. I mean, this is, you know, it's funny. He can't even get other lower people can't, because they get hired on merit, because most people, and this is something I always tried to teach him, was because I managed a lot of organizations, I managed a lot of companies, venture, you know, worked with entrepreneurs. You always want to hire slowly, fire quickly. And he would do the opposite. He would hire quickly because he would project onto somebody what he needs at that moment, whether they had the skill or not. Because to vet them, to understand if they had the skills, would require peeling the onion of a human being, vetting them, talking to them, reading them, analyzing them, which he's incapable of doing. So, you know, we had so many employees that were inappropriate, you know, for the role, but just by virtue of him saying, okay, I'm hiring them, they'll fit the need. And then I'd get a call like a month or so later, oh, this is not working out. And it's like, well, no shit.
Yeah, but I think overall, Matthew and I and the people that are, you know, being vocal, it's because we want to protect other people from having to experience the same thing. It really is detrimental to a person's, you know, legacy, to their work. You know, it's not just about credit. It's not just about recognition. It's the legacy. It's the currency of somebody's work. You know, Christian told me that credit is currency. And that's such a powerful point, you know? And so it's like, we do not want people, good people, talented people out there being manipulated, having their lives destroyed, being exploited, you know, having their work stolen. I mean, even the journalists. So there was some of the footage that we licensed from other citizen journalists that I met with, that I spoke to, that I created relationships with, that, you know, we built trust. They licensed their footage. James was claiming he was there. You know, there's this moment in the trailer where this little girl is walking along the border. It's this really ominous moment of this young child just alone out there, right? And James was claiming, oh yeah, me and my team, when we saw that little girl walking up, he was never there, you know? And so that, to take that journalist experience, their, you know, day in and day out at the border, you know, the guy lives out of his car, you know, and he's just there to cover these issues, taking away all of those moments. And, you know, this is mine, my team and I, you know, and it's just like, you weren't there. It seems
a reflection of him, that he has people standing behind him. He uses those people to, this is something I want to bring up earlier, this whole idea of ride or die, policing our own versus blind fealty to, especially a mission, okay, a cult, a person, a flawed person, original sin, we're all flawed, which is why, you know, one of the commandments is false idolatry. You know, and for James, I mean, you talk about the employment contract now at OMG, and he even said this in the job description, which we had some fun with, that you must be loyal to the founder, was something he tweeted and put on social media and published on OMG's website. That is now a prerequisite for employment with Jimbles O'Kimbles, is fealty, loyalty. You know, you don't have to see it spelled out, blind fealty, blind loyalty, but that is such an important facet to him, because he needs the ride or die. Don't question me. Now, a good leader and a good manager, a good entrepreneur, whether it's Steve Jobs or Bill Gates or anybody who's built something big, you are a good president. Trump is great at this, right? He wants viewpoints from multiple people who disagree with each other, and to vet them and judge them on their merits, and then sub-vet them with others. James just says, whatever I say, do. And if it's wrong, don't argue with me, just do it. And then you may suggest, oh, this is wrong. And then if he finds out, through, the iteration thereof of something done stupidly, wrongly, and then he changes course, he course corrects and does something, especially if it's something somebody else suggested, then it's always, oh, the idea I just came up with, we'll do it this way, which is just like, we look at that every day, see it played out in front of us so many thousands of times, we'd all just roll our eyes.
Yeah, it's highly disturbing. And then, even with the Anthony Muckraker, the guy that he rode the Beast Train with, which was also my suggestion for him to ride the train. And I set up the 2 journalists that he went with and, made sure that whole thing happened. It was like a 1.5-day trip. But Muckraker was one of the first journalists to ride that train. And him and his brother had an interaction with the cartel where their camera gear ended up being destroyed. And it was like completely non-related to OMG. But James was like, yeah, my colleague, he was kidnapped by the cartel. And, Anthony called him out. He was like, what are you talking about? That had nothing to do with OMG, And so it's just I want people to be aware, especially because he's finding the citizen journalists. He's finding the whistleblowers, do not launch a grenade at your life for this man because he's not going to have your back, and that was something really disturbing to me when.
Talk to Kyle Seraphin about that.
Oh my God. Yeah. And, I always thought, why does Kyle have so much hatred? Like, this is a disturbing.
It's amazing the bonds that are built and shared hatred of evil. I mean,
right.
we're like besties now. Kyle and I are besties. It's like, I've made so many friends because we've all been through this, trauma. For me, it was not that traumatic because, I'm so happy-go-lucky. To me, this is just an opera that's going to make for a great movie one day. But like the people who are truly fucked over, I was fucked over, sure, but I can stand on my own feet. Don't work for anybody, so that helps. But the people who are fucked over, the bonds that have been forged in shared experience and the misery in that experience, and what we saw as intelligent people, and now diagnosing it and analyzing it, it's incredible. I mean, you and I are on the phone at an hour a clip and just like love talking about a million different things now. Because we've come from a similar forged in this crucible of bullshittery. And so here we are.
Yes. We're all just burn victims. I call it, the James O'Keefe burn victims. We're all in the ICU with the panty thief and trying to process bullshit.
It's why I jump on that Without Conscience by Robert Hare, Snakes in Suits by Hare and Babyak, Political Ponerology by Andrew Lobachevsky. These are all books that deeply describe the minds of these kind of people and how they impact groups. And that's the key, because they can easily hijack groups and quickly distort the direction from something that is righteous and meaningful and true and good to something that's not, if they're not identified as pathological and sort of removed from decision making and authority. And it's like they have a moral form of colorblindness. They cannot see morals and ethics and right and wrong. They don't have a conscience in the same way that we do, the normal people do. And these kind of people should not be in charge of large organizations or the lives of others.
And that's the whole thing with nonprofits, corporations, boards of directors with oversight and statutory regulatory responsibilities, fiduciary responsibilities, management structures, checks and balances, government, right? I mean, checks and balances. And when you have a cult of personality, and checks and balances are eviscerated, which is what James has always tried to do, and what he really tried to do with PV. And when he realized he couldn't because he'd gone way too far, even though he doesn't believe he did anything wrong, but everybody else who's rational sees it, knows it, was experienced watching it, and said, no, you can't do that. And then he tries to break the toy. He tries to destroy it because if he can't have total control as a narcissistic sociopath, then it has to be destroyed. Individuals, organizations, people's jobs and careers, all of it. And so this is why, we do have these things in place, and a CEO does work for a board that's tasked with this oversight and regulatory compliance. The irony is with James, he was part of that board, and as chief executive, he had the deepest fiduciary responsibilities on both sides, on the oversight side with the board, and as the executive management side as CEO. And he was the only one violating any of it, the only one. And then when called out, everyone has to be destroyed. And in the end, he destroy himself. And Eric Metaxas will still be licking his balls. He's on the list.
I was gonna say at the beginning, Kayla said something that I just have been thinking about in the back of my brain here for the last few minutes, is that when you have that wait a minute moment, and I was just thinking about how, part of it was like work with Laura Loomer, like how intertwined they almost are. Is that you have a woman who handcuffed herself to the doors of Twitter back in the day because their Twitter account, handcuffed and went on a hunger strike because their Twitter account was new. I mean, then the contract for employment of the, basically you're a contractor, but you have a no compete. You don't, you're a contractor, but you no compete. You can't do anything else. To all these things, that is such a good statement of the wait a minute moment. The hey, this isn't quite right kind of thing. And from the people who he surrounds him with, who basically inflate his ego, to the things that he demands of people, is just one thing is you got that one kooky friend, or you want a high dedication, from your independent contractors, but everything combined is just this is a lot kind of of everything that's going on. And if you did just speaking out against it, it's kind of to me, I've watched the prior episodes. It's man, these people, what you went through in dealing with this, and now the bravery to stand up and be no, this is what happened to me. And kind of how you said, being the burn victim, it's just man, that is a brave place for you to be, is be no, this is too far. I'm speaking out against this. And I mean, just going through it. And when we said that, I kind of keeping a little list of wait a minute moments kind of thing. And just this, I mean, coming forward and standing up is strong.
Well, I really appreciate Matthew bringing up the guy who wrote his book. What was his name, Matthew?
Andrew Riley, Doghouse.
Andrew Riley.
On Twitter. No, I'm sorry, Doghouse is another account. I forget his Twitter handle, but he's gone deep into this.
Oh yeah, well, Matthew bringing that up, this is another moment of someone who is working for Project Veritas, and in the after hours writing this book for James, and then that he around, oh, this is my book, and here's my signed autograph and whatever, and this guy was legally threatened. All of his rights were taken away, and so it's for me, I'm one of hundreds, right? I'm one of hundreds. Of
I estimated at about 300 or so people.
Yeah.
Since
so
2009.
at this point, and so I understand what I went through. If I didn't have these people, I would probably still be sitting there kicking myself. Did I do the right thing? Should I have just stayed quiet and been submissive? And yes, sir, I'm sorry, sir. Hand me the crumbs that you can toss to the side. I would still be processing. But because of all of the hundreds of burn victims, I knew the day that I got out that I called Christian, who coined that moment. If you pause, think about it, right? I called Christian being I had the moment, and he's yep, same thing happened to me. And then it was just the, call after call after conversation after conversation, people reaching out, thank you so much for speaking up. And for me at this point, my God, we all need to say something, because this man is finding the best citizen journalists, the best whistleblowers, and launching grenades at their lives, and not thinking twice as soon as the 24-hour news cycle, and as soon as he hits the 30 million viewpoint, it's over. He's on to the next. And this is a person's life that is completely devastated, completely destroyed, jobs lost, careers down the drain, family destroyed, homes lost. My God, at what point do we say enough?
In his situation, especially, this is a really talented dude who went from like conventional production, worked for like CPB, like public broadcasting, I think in Atlanta, and then worked for PV, which is a dream job for him. And now he's like kind of out of the industry. I mean, he'll end up doing more stuff in it. He's done independent film, like short films, directed and did DOP work. He's a really talented dude, like a jack of all trades, kind of like you, like just multiple skill sets, you know, writer, producer, director, camera guy. And instead, he's like working on another career, you know, to pay the bills. And, you know, it's an interesting one and he'll do well.
Traumatized. Thank you for saying this, Matthew. It's so sad. Like, how many talented, good-hearted, amazing people are we losing because of one monster? You know, because of one person, that their ego and their, you know, they just step all over these people to the point they're so traumatized they quit. I've talked to at least 3 former PV journalists who no longer do journalism because of what they went through.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you can also say like, it's kind of like, it's a real shame too, because people are giving him money with the serious belief that he's going to use that to, you know, help those people and or to bring their stories to you know, exposure. And in reality, he's taking money, laughing all the while to the bank, using it, you know, to enrich himself and have a great time. And if, you know, it happens to destroy the lives of his sources and his employees, so be it. No big deal. You know, it's worth it for the mission. Like, it's just crazy. It's like absolute, total crazy lunacy. And it just boggles my mind that more people in, you know, the internet ecosphere aren't willing to just call it out. Like, we like, this is what we kind of do, like here on the internet in small little spaces. It's like we call out bad behavior because other people don't like to call it out. It's like why, that's how the alternative media started. It was like calling out the bad behavior that the corporate press wasn't going to call out. And now here we are seeing that same dynamic repeat itself. It's just like, come on, guys.
It's even worse because when you are independent, like at least if you're in a corporate environment, at least there's like an HR department that you can like possibly go to with some of your complaints, and that you have dental and medical coverage, you know, and like paid time off. Like, you know, at this point, it's like the Wild West. Use and abuse, steal all the shit, dip out once they're, you know, the person's left on the side of the road, no remorse. At least in the industry, there are like certain layers of protection for employees. Whereas, you know, this new media landscape, I mean, look at what happened with Crowder and Steven Crowder and Jared. I mean, that guy, he fought for over a year, paid money out of his own pocket to free himself of an NDA to say this man that I'm working for is a monster. You know, like, my God, the things people are having to live through over, you know, this new media landscape that's here to liberate everyone. Like, no, they're going to use and abuse you and, you know, and spit you out. And you're going to be so devastated, you'll never work the craft ever again. My God, something needs to change.
I love your righteous indignation. Have I told you lately how much of a spitfire you are?
Oh, yeah. Well, I want to fight for other people. Like, I know so many good people that their work has been taken, that has not been credited correctly. At what point, like, what do we need? I want to start brainstorming, like, how do we create systems to protect people in this field?
Well,
you know, and Matthew, he's like, there's no money in it.
No, and it's not even about the money side. That's why I believe in the nonprofit model for media and journalism. Donors can support things on mission based on, you know, narrative focus, issue-based advocacy in area, all these different things. So I believe in the model. I just believe in the regulatory frameworks that exist to protect the model from becoming money laundering operations, aka Luke Rutkowski, and slush funds like the NRA. I believe that these laws are just and they allow a proliferation of these good organizations and good movements. But it's, when they get abused, we have to call them out. And, one of the things that, and I agree with you on the righteous indignation, like hashtag me too. I'm doing all this because I don't want to see this continue. I like calling out frauds. It's a vocation. It's why after Wall Street, I went into journalism and politics, policy, activism, organizing on some level, because I like doing it. And I don't do this, not my, my put food on the table kind of career. I still do, other things independently in the private sector, which of course got the mob and Jimbal's trying to spin that I'm on Pfizer's payroll because, truth be damned, hashtag journalism. But protecting the people, for these organizations, for us to succeed, for us to win, for us to create things that have staying power, you need to find good people. Good people need to come together and work together. And our only asset in these creative operations, like a PV, an OMG, media enterprise, a Dangerous Rhetoric podcast, is people. And if you mistreat your human capital, financial capital is fungible. $1, gotten here and spent there, it's frictionless and means almost nothing. There, you can always get more money. I mean, we can talk about, the scent of money and what is money? It's the fruit of our labor, the output. But once it becomes financial capital, it's fungible, it can go anywhere. Human capital is not fungible. Human capital is unique and novel and needs to be meshed together in a constructive, proactive way. And then like a plant, like a flower bed, it needs to flourish and germinate and be pollinated and cross-pollinate with, bees bringing the honey. That's the way ideas and ideation occur, and it needs to also be protected and preserved because it's delicate, and it's like politics. Bad behavior enters in, creates divisions, creates drama, creates trauma, creates dislocation, and eventually cancer. Bad people doing bad things in a delicate framework of creatives and human capital coming together to produce something. You inject a little bit of this toxicity and the cancer festers and develops, and it all goes to shit. And then that's exactly what we're describing among the scattering of good people, many of whom have left industry. And you will still be in this industry because you're incredibly talented, so you will find something. I'm going to help, others will help, Christian, because talent is a rare thing, especially multi-talent is even rarer. But like any talent, you want to find talented people. And PV, in spite of James O'Keefe, had the most talented group of people ever assembled. As a lawyer, James ran out the best lawyer we ever had. Best producers, best editors, best journalists. I mean, the turnover. But even for this 2 to 3 year period, when we had hit this high watermark post 2021, 2022, where it was like 70 people, even when it blew up at 65 people, 60 people, the most talented, cohesive the team had ever been. Of course, you get a big group, you get a few people like retard cunt, that's R.C. Maxwell, for those who don't remember the acronym, who are cancers by their nature. They produce nothing. All they do is sow dissent because they're so lazy, incompetent, and stupid, they can't create anything. And, the reason R.C. maintained his job was because he licked, again, another, ball sweat guy, hung off James's balls like ball sweat. He was
You like how he entered and exited the chat so quick with that? There was like something on X and he comes in and he's like, well, James started this lawsuit, and then a bunch of people jumped on it.
No, I mean, he's a spineless jellyfish with an IQ of 65. And I mean, it's amazing, that he could get issued a driver's license. He's so fucking dumb. But this is a guy who should be a barista at best, but not complicated, not Starbucks. Those have more than 3 or 4 ingredients. That's too much for him. I don't know, maybe a hot dog stand salesman. So dumb, so incompetent. So the way he survived was licking James' balls and sowing dissent among other people. So every organization has to find those people and weed them out. James protected those people and weeded out the good people, cycle over cycle. OMG's had 4 to 5 waves of employees come and go. And at PV, same thing. And we had great people who left. I mean, our head of legal for a couple of years was one of the best lawyers in the country. He landed on his feet. He's crushing it. He's one of the top lawyers in the country. And the fact that he wanted to work with PV, and he would tell things to James, no, you can't do that. And James would just berate him. And then, COVID, he has kids, he moved, and James guilted him and sent his wife an email saying that you're raising, horrible kids because, you're scared that, your husband might get pre-dawn rated. You don't want your kids to see that. Well, if they saw that, they would have character. Now they won't. This is the kind of guy we're dealing with. Well, because, one of the best lawyers in the country took a pay cut to work with us and told James, no, you can't film in an election site. And there are other such, instances of, no, that's illegal. And the law is very clear on this. And so, he ran him out.
I don't know how Ben Barr sticks around. I really don't. Like,
I love Ben Barr. I consider him a close friend.
He's a good guy.
Yeah, I think he's one of the best lawyers in the country as well. I think for him, it's interesting. I don't really want to talk much about Ben because Ben likes to be discreet. But Ben and his wife are two of my favorite people and very close friends. And I know that Ben is motivated by one thing, which is the work. He is an incredible, maybe the best in the country, constitutional analyst and lawyer who can litigate complicated constitutional issues. And for him, the nexus of media and journalism as an act and the law and the politics of the law and the state to state that's what he lives for. So, I mean, if Ben is, whatever Ben does, Ben to me is above reproach, even if he is, working.
Yeah. And, that was, when I say OMG was like my dream job, it really was, because ever since citizen journalism started, it was like, wow, there's this whole new playing field. And a lot has been discussed in regards to, corporate versus independent, all these new platforms emerging. I've been a part of this journey the whole way, right? Living it firsthand and also seeing it and having colleagues and friends who are in this movement, right? And for me, it's like at OMG, I was getting to empower people, right? I was getting to work with citizen journalists who cared about what was going on in their community. A citizen journalist is someone who is pulled into documenting something that's going on in their backyard, right? There's issues going on, whether it's the border or homelessness or, God knows what, these people are pulled into the field because it's a high impact area, right? That is the citizen journalist. You ask people, how'd you get started? Oh, well, there was something going on in my community and I decided to pick up a camera and record it, right? And that's so powerful. That's so, that's the essence of journalism, right? That's what local print newspaper used to be, right? Is sharing those stories of what's happening in your community, all of that, right? So now we're in this new media landscape. And I'm seeing all of these people, trying to produce content and rarely ever being able to make a living off of it, right? Rarely ever seeing any type of financial compensation for the hours and hours and hours of work that they do. And so at OMG, my job was to, look at all the information that was coming in, finding the top most talented people in different regions and reaching out to them and learning about their stories and actually getting them paid, right? So that was so important to me. It was so meaningful, that I would be able to be on the phone and say, I'm going to get you a paycheck. Like, we're going to get you paid for your work, I talked to hundreds and hundreds of people in my time of 10 months being there, and I got like multiple journalists paychecks for their work. And so this organization, like the concept behind OMG is so important. Like, we really need something in the industry that can help support these people in a fair and just way, right? And make sure that they get compensated for their time, for their energy. My God, how many journalists are stuck damn near homeless, just out there recording because that's their calling. It's their passion. It's a gift that has been bestowed on them by like the divine force. You're born into this character, this person. It's like, an artist doesn't choose to be an artist. They just draw, they just paint, they just do it. It's like second nature, right? In order to have some type of fulfillment in their lives, they have to do it. And so it's like, how do we create an industry that can foster the growth, that can help these people expand their voices, give them fair compensation for their work? I mean, that's why I was so in love with my job, you know, and what I was so passionate about with OMG. And, you know, every single day, it was 10 hours felt like 5 minutes. 10 hours felt like 5 minutes for me.
I know that feeling.
Because I was so in love and involved and immersed in the work, you know, and we need something like that. But, you know,
it was a good idea. OMG kind of it was a good idea. Now, James's vision for this was, how can I get crowdsourced content, not pay for it, or pay de minimis, not employ people, so I can get things I can put out there and get clicks on, so I can continue to get invited to Turning Point USA, so I can go on stage and talk about how much of a hero and a victim I am and self-sacrifice and blah, blah, blah. But the idea, you know, is a good one, even if his motives are flawed, because his motives revolve around his solipsism, his own ego, his own megalomania, his self-obsession and narcissism. But it is a very, very good idea. It's funny, the thing you talk about with independent media, remind me when we get done with this, I got to send you a speech I gave at CPAC Budapest, where I gave a whole lecture about like independent media and, you know, talking about, at that time, was talking about PV, talking about we're all journalists, talking about, you know, the right coming up with its independent frameworks that can even start off as Substack pages. And by the way, Substack is a great way to get a voice out there, and written is a lot easier than video, because video, you need that distribution to get clicks. So you already need to have an embedded platform to get some virality, unless, you know, one-off situations, of course, like Hawk Tuah, Welcome to America, circa 2024. But, you know, the idea is good, and you and I can continue to try and iterate it out. I think that we, you know, the nonprofit model I still think is the best, but it does need somebody to, you know, come in and execute the vision with a benevolence to it. And James is not a benevolent actor. So all he did was take that model and use it as a tool of exploitation, because he's an exploiter, coercer, manipulator, essentially a fraud. And you talked about, you know, the calling of people like artists to do art, to do journalism. For me, it's calling out frauds. That's why I do this, wasting, you know, half my business day instead of with clients on investment banking mandates, not for Pfizer, motherfuckers. Maybe some other healthcare companies, because you know what, not all pharma is bad. We have extended life with terminal cancer diagnoses of 10 years ago. So, I mean, you know, the online Twitterverse, as I always said to the employees, Twitter's not real life, is filled with, again, the mob take is not the right take. But no, I mean, I admire and agree with your vision on this, very much so.
Yeah, I just, you know, it would be amazing to create something like that. And on my exit interview with James, which apparently was, you know, a sabotage moment so he could find out all the intel and blacklist me. You know, yeah. So, you know, on the exit interview, my closing thoughts to him was, you know, you have the capacity to build something like the New York Times or like CNN, you know, something that has longevity to it, right? But it's how you treat the people that are involved, and it's how you either empower them or take them out, right? And so there's such high level of potential, and that's why I think it's so frustrating for the people that are closest to him, is like, God, why? Like, it's so easy to just do the right thing, you know, but it's like this self-sabotaging energy is just, it's stuck, it's there, that's who he is, you know? And but at the end of the day, we really need to, maybe the answer is everyone just be independent, you know, but for me, there's
can't put food on the table unless you have a scalable model.
Right. And there's nothing, Matthew, like, you know this, there's nothing like being in a newsroom with talented people, and you're just, it's like a flow, it's an energy. There's nothing like it, you know? And so it's this collaboration, and you're building, and it's, right there, and make that cut, and it's going to slam, you know, slam dunk. And then, you know, it hits, and you see the people's reaction. Like, there's something so magical about a newsroom. There's something so magical about being able to work with people, you know, and I hope that the industry can figure its shit out. Okay. We're done with the Tim Pools. We're done with the O'Keefes. My God, like, take a seat. We need somebody, like, we need some type of organization to come resurrect Project Veritas from the dead. Okay. Like,
well, I got to say, the way this court case is going, My guess is, and this is why James brought, and we haven't even talked about this yet. We've talked about it offline, Brentley. This frivolous counterclaim, 80 pages of screenshots of tweets that board members or other people liked or retweeted criticizing James O'Keefe. That for this intrepid journalist of First Amendment warrior, that's defamation. And by the way, you can't leak shit about me because I'm James O'Keefe. But he made his career leaking shit about other people in the public domain. And then all the time he's like, I'm a public figure. Right? Megyn Kelly. I does the Megyn Kelly episode. I have to expect that everything I've ever said, every tweet, every text, every personal message that's going to be aired, I'm a public figure and I do this dangerous work and I'm like a spy and blah, 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 blah. And then a counterclaim of like, oh, and who is JOK Panty Thief? This is not journalism. They've exposed my personal stuff that I've got, an STD and that I'm addicted to Xanax and whatever else. I'm just adding editorial color for the audience on that. And this,
those are accurate 2 points. The JOK Panty Thief has brought up.
Totally. And the JOK PT is
documentary evidence that suggests that James O'Keefe has knowingly given women STDs. I think, an STD, genital warts, I think is the actual.
Yeah, and I think it was human
papillomavirus.
Yeah, human papillomavirus, HPV, which also is a variant of hepatitis. So who knows what that morphs into. So, that's not journalism. And by the way, even as a public figure or non-public figure, the 80 pages of screenshot tweets with his strip mall fucking attorneys from Gainesville that, they're counter-suing PV. PV's going to win the suit. And OMG is going to be out of business, and James is going to have millions of dollars of civil liability, judgments against him that he has to pay back. So PV may sort of reemerge because between the CNN suit that I think they'll get damages on, and the O'Keefe stuff. Just selling the boats, the ill-gotten gains that James took the salary and the money he got from the book, the second book he did, his very, very high salary of $400+ a year, and then never paid anything. Out of his pocket for anything, groceries or dinners or travel or go to see his girlfriends, many of them all over the country. Like he didn't, reach into his pocket. He used his corporate card for everything, as we discovered, which is why we had to do all this shit. We had to holy shit, what are you doing? Tom O'Hara, this CFO he fired, and we've talked all about this ad nauseum, but it's like, no, we have to claw this back. We can't pay for this. It's not legal. Okay, you're fired. All of that comes to a head and accountability comes, and the judgments will be coming, and, the boats will have to be sold and he'll have to be bankrupt. But that's, he loves to tweet those, memes, fuck around and find out. He seriously fucked around, with very black and white, not gray, black and white law and the way nonprofits are governed.
It's very funny too, because the way that the whole theme of the Trump coming back into office is this whole theme of accountability coming of daddy's home, that the mature, responsible men are going to be back in charge of making policy. And it's funny how, we see this lacking in the right-wing media sphere. We see this lack of mature, responsible, honorable, masculine, dudes. The guys that are out there they're sort of lionized as these, heads of industry, they're kind of just keyboard warriors and camera boys. James loves to get in front of the camera and he put on a performance. And once you catch the vibe that that's what he's doing, now it's anytime I see him talk in a video, I'm just he's performing. It's impossible to get a genuine sentiment out of the dude. And if we had people people that could, get the fundraising that PV could get, because part of it was the cult of personality, James himself drove those donations, which is why they dried up when he left and tarred the whole, torched the place proverbially. But I think, I truly think, anybody could really, if you had the team and the talent, you could reproduce that whole effect and get citizen journalists and whistleblowers to come together and expose, dark secrets that are being concealed by the establishment and by the corporate media. But it'd be interesting to see that story arc. But yeah, it's boggles my mind.
I'm rooting for it. I've told PV people, I was I'm sorry I didn't believe you. Project Veritas was right. And so I think, that was my turning point. I had to experience it firsthand. But hopefully people will come around and understand that this organization, yes, it did have internal issues, not only with James O'Keefe, but there's, other stuff going on. to some degree, maybe some people put into leadership, and I don't know, Matthew can speak to this more, but at the end of the day, I think that PV is going to make a comeback, and I really hope that people, will see the light, and I think that moment is coming sooner rather than later.
Oh yeah, the court case and the other stuff. I mean, truth always has a way of making its way, percolating to the top, no matter how much coercion and manipulation to prevent it. It's and by the way, there's no alternative truth. There's different perspectives on nuanced things. This shit ain't nuanced. Like in terms of like, oh, what was right, what was wrong, who's the victim, who's the victimizer. I mean, the projector and the narcissist can play the victim as much as he wants, but he is circling the drain. I mean, his legal representation alone is proof positive, in terms of, fighting on this case. This is strip mall attorneys from Gainesville. How a far cry from, the money he used to spend on legal, funded by donors with a big budget when we were running a real organization. And now he's got a couple of guys who he's probably paying $60 an hour with the added quid pro quo of a couple of Instagram and Twitter, tags to drive their strip mall business or whatever their business, remedial business is. What kind of fucking lawyer, does a victory lap, and I tweeted about this yesterday, does a victory lap in a blog post on a case that's ongoing over a injunction being filed against their client, an emergency injunction that is, as by virtue of being an emergency injunction, there's a timeliness that is imperative to its filing. Filed a year late, the activity that it was meant to injunct in behavior had been grossly violated. So there's, why are you filing an injunction or, granting an injunction if you're the court, if it's already been violated? You file an emergency injunction to stop behavior from it happening, and then they emerge from court. We won, America, justice, First Amendment. Oh, it's all fucking LARPing. These lawyers are LARPers too. It's such incredible bullshit. And this guy, Coffee and COVID, or COVID and Coffee, Jeff Childers and his Yutz associate, Nick Whitney, who are absolutely some of the most mid-witted lawyers I've ever come across. I mean, Better Call Saul looks like fucking Clarence Darrow or, fucking the greatest lawyer, Shapiro, the great Dershowitz compared to these guys.
Well, it's funny, even in the cease and desist letter they sent me, there was like spelling errors. Yeah, they were like, to your better what was it? Angles.
Yeah, your better angles. Yeah. And I mean, is it a geometry? Should we go back and study geometry here? Like, no, I mean, these guys are fucking yutzes. And, if they ever serve me, I'll happily be deposed. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah, me too.
What are they going to do? Play the DeSantis video from February 7th, 2023?
I mean, we are at 2.5 hours. I think we sort of like ran the gamut of, Kayla, your experience. Is there anything else that you want to add in, that you want to cover? Any little?
I think just in regards to final thoughts, everything I went through, there's definitely been tears shed. But just in my life experiences, I'm like, I've gone through so much worse. It's just, it is disheartening, to just put your heart and soul into something and, just see it end up in such a negative place. But, I'm here, I am committed to ensuring that every single person that crosses James' path is aware of who he is. I wrote a quote this morning from a musician where, it said, I'll fight your whole army with a rock in my hand. And that's how I feel. It's like this guy's he has this huge platform and all these, I'll fight all of you with just a rock. It's a David and Goliath situation, and I'm willing to.
His only weapon is ginning up a social media mob with fake bullshit based on his two platforms that he's got 2.7, 2.8 million each, Instagram and Twitter. And you can already see that even like with him tweeting what he did, the same old shit trying to weaponize against me the other 2 days ago or yesterday morning, that it falls flat. That number one weapon he has is it's a blade that, initially in February 2023 was quite sharp. And he was able to set a narrative that destroyed the organization, destroyed a lot of lives. It launched him into something else, built totally on lies and fraud. And so that was a sharp blade at that point. But it's continually over this last year and a half, by virtue of his own behavior and his own content and his own public persona, gotten duller and duller and weaker and weaker. And I mean, that shit won't be able to cut a hangnail in 6 months. He's circling the drain, which is why he's got attorneys like Jeff Childers and Nick Whitney.
Yeah. But, I'm willing to fight. I'm willing to speak up. I encourage other people who have been victimized by this individual to also speak up. People need to know, because things like this can be very damaging. I mean, as we mentioned before, so many people have went and lived through these experiences, and they're no longer doing their trade and their craft. And that's a tragedy. I think just being able to protect people, from enduring or living through similar experiences is very, very important. And then also, right now I'm working with a few people to make sure that they're fairly compensated for their work in their project with Line in the Sand. It's ridiculous. One journalist called me, I still haven't been paid for my footage. I'm not even
I gotta speak. We texted, I got to speak with him.
Yeah, and I'm not even there, and I'm calling our producer like, hey, could we get this guy paid, please? I mean, it's just ridiculous. Yeah. So
I feel about you. Like I feel really, it's important that I help you land somewhere, because you're too talented. Like, we have so many hacks in journalism. Like, when you have a multi-talent, like, you need to be deployed every week and month. You're not, doing what you're great at doing and you're passionate about doing. It's not just, not happy for you personally, but it's bad for society. Like, we deploy talents in our wonderful republic.
Right. Exactly. So, that's, for me, it's being able to protect people and create solidarity. And I really am so appreciative to Matthew and to Christian and to all the former Project Veritas people. There's been a intense amount of solidarity to where it's really helped process, what I went through. And I mean, something like this, it could land someone they could want to off themselves or some shit, like it really is to that level, like where you could, if you did not have a support team, you would be pushed to like the darkest places of the mind, because it's so devastating.
Totally. This is what I wanted when you and I talked about this. I think it's important to go back to for a second. His hatred of women, mothers, pregnancy, children, a good Christian, a good Catholic, pro-life, but he hates kids. He hates pregnant women. He hates mothers. You can't be a mother and work with me. And it is only because OMG doesn't have the power that PV had and the budget that, probably knowing that you were pregnant, he hired you because you're talented. But he has so much antipathy to this. And obviously, there's so many psychological issues. That's a whole nother, you and I have talked about Brentley with his, father, who's a total douche. And, his relationship with his mother, who, I talked to her and she knew what he was. She saw it in the office when he would yell at, older female employees. And there was an instance where she, dressed him down and said, don't talk to people like that. And he yelled at his mother in the office. By the way, his mother was on payroll, which is another problem, which we discovered and said, really? What? But so she was there and she yells at this older female employee and he yells at her and his mother says, you can't talk to people like that. And he says, hey, don't you dare tell me what I can and can't do in my office or you're out of here. So, this is, his treatment. And the thing that I think upset a lot of PV, the board, PV people, some of our observers and advisors who joined that call on Monday, February 6th, 2023, my 42nd birthday that I will never forget, 6 hours on a board call, listening to people crying, was the woman who had a miscarriage and demanded she return back to work. Why? Because she was in development and he needed that money to keep coming in so he can keep flying private to fly around and bang trashy whores or whatever the fuck he was doing under fake guises of whatever, investigations and donor meetings and this and that. And the fact that she had the mental strength to manage through that. She's a wonderful person. She's part of our alumni crew. We all are family. We all love each other. We've all been through this crucible. But what about the next woman who, has a miscarriage and he demands she returns to work, she kills herself? Or what about the next woman who has pregnancy and she comes back too early, postpartum depression, and he yells at her and she snaps and she kills herself? This shit is seriously in play. And it's why we have some of the laws that maybe in some states have gone a little too far with state labor boards. But, laws do exist to protect employees from abuse. And, even the harassment that comes from just being too difficult, courts exist to adjudicate, what's the line on this. But there is a line. And he crosses it, day in, day out in every which way. And especially with vulnerable women who he exploits and takes advantage of, whether it's sexually or whether it's, the woman who like this woman who had a miscarriage, go out, get me more money. Like, who fucking cares? Get over it. Well, humans are wired to be human beings, and he's not. As I messaged him at one point, like he is like a soulless mutant.
Yeah, and it just real quick to that point, it's funny because I was talking to a donor. And, she was like, well, why don't you guys just all be grown-ups and, write your list of all the things that, you feel like you are need or, all the issues you want to talk about and present it to him and have a conversation. I'm like, let me see. So I asked 4 people separately, what do you guys think? If we, all the former OMG employees created this list of grievances and had a conversation, every single person I asked individually was like, there's no way, and then Matthew, he was like, he's soulless or something like that. There is no soul there,
Yeah, what do you, I mean, how are you going to talk to somebody like this? We've all now, just in this 3 hours, we've done a deep character study, and we did 6 hours previously. You did 3 hours with Callan. There's nothing there. I mean, it's hold on, let me.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that we need to continue to advocate for the industry to get its shit together and to treat people properly. And so that's kind of my
call out the really bad actors instead of, Charlie Kirk running interference for him. Okay. So last month, Jimbal's tweeted, people raise their hands and say, what can I do? How can I help? My response to them is, what are you willing to sacrifice? Many of hands, because he can't actually write anything cogently without many errors. Many of hands will go down as the people suddenly understand what it will take. So, it's what are you willing to sacrifice is sort of the bottom line up front in that key tweet of philosophical brilliance laden with grammatical error. So I just quote tweeted, if it's your morals, you too can work for O'Keefe Media. And then I DM'd that to him and I said, trying to help your recruiting since you lost to everyone yet again. Ever think that maybe, just maybe, it's you? Your mother and sister knew. Your mother knew early that she'd birthed a lemon. She told me once at that barbecue at your house in New Jersey, she told me she knew you were different by the time you were in first grade. She knew then there was something not human about you. And when she told me, there was a wistfulness in her delivery, which was sad. She wanted a human son. Instead, she got an emotionless mutant. Wistfulness is an emotion. You won't understand it, but you can Google it. I did not get a response. I'm sure it'll get read to me in deposition. Then I hit him soon thereafter with my line in the sand, ... EU.
Yep.
Fuck this fucking guy. I'll shit on him for another 3 hours if we want.
No one is beyond reproach. And this is again, it's like what it comes down to is like, there are basic tenets of how, basic just like, civility, like how humans treat one another generally. And he's just violating those across the board, whether it's, in his personal life and his, treatment of women or
it's so bad.
Well, that's just it's egregious. Like, and, there's plenty of documentation of that. Anybody can go to James O'Keefe Penny Thief and follow that all there. It's all there for you. But it's just like really boggles my mind that the same patterns that we saw with Jeffrey Epstein, with Jimmy Savile, this willingness to play down the bad behavior, to tolerate it for the mission, for the tribe, for whatever the fuck it is. Like, no, like this is like, we're in a new century now, new millennium. There's like a whole new, playing field here. We don't have to tolerate bad behavior by, heroes because they're the only person that can get the job done. No, if anything, Project Veritas and OMG has demonstrated that there are hundreds of really talented, really capable people who can do this work better than James.
Kayla, right? I mean, I wish you would have been a field director at PV. Working with the journalists, helping with the logistics, planning out the story, because it was such a bigger operation. We had 10, 20 stories going at once, and your organizational skills and your vision for the journalism, you would have been one of the best field directors we've ever had. like every other role there, especially of any management, we went through so many people because James would helicopter and abuse them, tell them they're doing it wrong, take over and fuck it up and then blame them. And, the same patterns that we've talked about so much.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, I think it was just so sad that I had to leave the crew, because every single one of the employees, I knew, their spouses' names, their children. It's so funny. I wanted to ask Steven, his operations manager, that literally is like stuck to the ball sack up the dude's ass, right? Like, I just wanted to ask him, does James know the name of your son?
No, of course not. Doesn't care.
Because he wouldn't.
No, he
because
wouldn't.
The man, he sleeps and wakes up and goes to sleep and wakes up thinking about James O'Keefe. James. Oh, how can I make it bigger? How can I do this? How can I, the servitude, right? Of just the yes man. Turns out this guy's getting paid $180,000, $180,000. And I'm getting paid $28 an hour salaried, so I get no overtime, and I'm begging for a little bit of a raise, and they're just like, how dare you ask for extra, But asking this man, does James know the name of your child? It's a no. And so it's like those moments are just so insane. It's so wild. So yeah, you dedicate your life to the mission. Never question the authority. Don't ever have a life. It's just wild. But yeah.
Yeah, I can assure everyone on this of one thing. James will watch this 3 or 4 times, looking for anything he can spin in a deposition, in a tweet, in a clip of a video. Yeah. Hey, James.
Yeah, hi, James. It's funny too. I think he actually did mention dangerous rhetoric in one of the legal filings.
No, that 80-page counterclaim of criticisms about him that I actually think he wrote it, because you'd have to pay a lawyer for that. And even these $60, personal injury ambulance chasing yutzes from Gainesville, even they, would not want. And just the writing of it, I've known James longer than anybody, and I know his writing, and it just reeked of him. And I could feel the indignation of how dare you criticize me in every line. And this is a fucking legal filing. This is supposed to be dry, like the old tagline from that show, Dragnet, just the facts, ma'am. And this is all, emotion, jumping in. It just reeks of him. And yeah, I'm looking forward to addressing it head on.
It'll be fun. It'll be fun to see what happens. But Kayla, thank you so much for your hard work. I think, the southern border crisis is a major issue. I think it's one of the reasons Trump got elected. And, I'm very appreciative of anybody who goes down there and spends time trying to expose the story. So thank you. And especially while you have kids at home, bravo. I got to champion all the people out there that make babies, because you guys are really making the future people. So very much appreciate.
Keep in mind, lefties are, giving themselves vasectomies on the Upper West Side and having 0 or 1 kids, and conservatives are having 4 or 5. So math, numbers don't lie, people do.
Don't worry, guys. I got 4 under the belt. I got you. We're procreating here, thinking about the future. Yeah, but I will say I only went to the border once. I worked directly with the journalists who were on the border, the people that were really boots on the ground. So I cannot take any of that credit. I'm not a James O'Keefe, story thief. I just got to work with really incredible, amazing people that were specifically on the border beat. So just to make that clear, guys.
And Matthew, thank you again for joining us and bringing your particular brand of incisive, directed commentary.
Yeah, no, it's a lot of fun. So the greatest luxury I have in life, I have 2 real privileges, blessings, is I work for myself, and you can't really come at me and put this course of sort of Damocles on the kind of pressure tactics that a lot in the movement like to use in blacklisting and that kind of shit. And if they want to blacklist me, I have a dog over there sleeping who loves me. And I get to, talk to brilliant, talented, amazing, interesting, funny, sharp people. I mean, my number one metric on spending time with people is, do I have to explain something twice to you? Which is why I will never hang out with RC, aka retard cunt Maxwell, because you could explain it 60 times and he'll still walk into a wall. Fucking yuts. But you know, and even James, by the way, is not a moron. So the pleasure for me in PV was, you know, working with a lot of smart people, including James, but his behavioral deficiencies, and I believe the word is evil, you know, just finally overtook whatever soul might have existed at one point. And, you know, he had to be, you know, checked because it was all of our asses on the line. And anytime you want to do a pod, you know, both hit my favorite Venn diagram, which is, you know, calling out frauds, telling the truth, and shitting on James O'Keefe. Like, hey, I'm your guy.
Perfect.
And by the way, people say, oh, this sounds so personal for you. I'm like, oh, fuck yeah, it is. But it's also, you know, on a higher level, you know, what we've talked about, Kayla and I both on here and offline a ton, which is like, I don't want to see the next woman, you know, get abused. I grew up without a father. I was raised by my mother, my aunt, my grandmother, and my sister. And I have very, very little tolerance for the kind of shit that finally is kind of becoming a vestigial thing, unless, you know, there's some bad actors like O'Keefe when it comes to treatment of women.
Yeah, I think that is the number one point in telling the story, is that it's just, you know, preventing future talent from being harmed and possibly, you know, dissuaded from continuing to develop those talents and, you know, contribute to the culture in ways, breaking stories we can only, you know, imagine. It could be tomorrow, you know, the next Julian Assange, the next, you know, famous story breaker person.
Yeah.
But with that, JL, do you have any final thoughts you want to?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for having such wonderful guests. You guys are amazing for my first run here as co-host. And, you know, one thing I kind of have thinking here is that anybody who almost claims to be a spiritual successor of Andrew Breitbart is kind of the like the big red flag. That you know, I mean, going from Crowder to O'Keefe to, I mean, many other people, it's like they all claim to have the spiritual succession to Andrew Breitbart, and I'm just like, that seems to be the number one flag to, like, my number one takeaway here is that, like, that seems to be the big like thing there.
And Bannon as well, by the way, same thing.
Yeah.
You weren't on the one we did with Christian, Dan Brentley, and other Dan that we did, what, 6-7 months ago. And we talked a lot about that. And, you know, Christian was really Andrew Breitbart's guy. I knew him from the beginning. I knew Andrew a little bit and obviously liked him a lot and admired him. But Christian worked very, very closely with him. And he talked about on the other pod we did in detail, you know, Andrew warning Christian and others about James. Like, this guy is hurtling toward, you know, problematic behavior and doing a lot of bad shit. And Andrew had the call about Steve Bannon as well. You know, when he never would have allowed Steve Bannon to take over editorial of Breitbart. Now, that being said, I wrote for Breitbart, and Bannon did a very, very good job making Breitbart way more relevant. But Andrew also knew the venality of this guy, the corruption, the greed, the willingness to lie, cheat, and steal to get what he wants and to get money. And so Andrew never would have wanted that.
Yeah, and I think that's a good place to end it there. You know, the whole mission with Dangerous Rhetoric is to have uncomfortable conversations and to share truths that people don't want shared. So I think this conversation definitely fits in with that.
Can't wait.
So thanks again, guys. And we'll be back again soon with another one. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.